Dude, oh, and we're live. Hello, anybody out there in YouTube land? Thanks for joining us. Oh, that got a bit bright there. I hope our connection's working out okay tonight. And if anybody's there, can you let me know if you hear me okay? I've got a wee green light down on the audio that says that you can. Oh, bear with me. So, oh goodness, it's been a while, folks. So thanks very much for joining me. We just popped on a couple of minutes early, as usual, to make sure everything's working okay. And as I said, I hope you can hear me all out there. If there's anybody there, Bojack Harkness, hey Bojack, hey Doc, sounds and looks good. Thanks very much, Bojack. We're in a new station, so we are. We've apologies for being away. I'm sure you know why. And we've had a wee bit of a mad time here, and it's just made sort of life a bit impossible to get on with here. We've had to sort of deal with my father's passing and so on. So apologies, as I said, we I think the last time we were on here, we said we'd be back that in a few days, and things went downhill for us very quickly. But anyway, it's good to be back, to be honest with you. And I've been moving house as well. So this is the new doghouse. And you're all welcome, I suppose. And things are a wee bit different here at the minute, and we're still in the middle of kind of getting organised and moving, I suppose, and getting things organised here. So you'll have to bear with me. Where, as I said, for example, all my books are about me at the minute, but they're not even remotely organised, and it'll be very tricky for me to find one off the shelf at the minute. There's Brad saying, "Wow, welcome back, Doc. Such a pleasure to see you again." Thank you very much, Brad. And by the way, everybody, thank you very much for all your very kind messages on the community and on the YouTube channel. I really appreciated it. Thank you very much. As I said, so it's a lot of change, and I suppose oddly enough, we reached the halfway point of June when all this happened. Excuse me. And I suppose just to recap a wee bit, but we've been working away at our June book club, as you can see behind me, and we're just coming to the end of our second notebook. And in fact, I've started the third notebook. Excuse me. Pardon me. So we wrapped up with, I suppose, the halfway point of the book. With Paul and Jessica, sort of, I suppose, caught between the wild Fremen, whose only interest is their water, carried in the flesh of two unshielded bodies. So here we have I suppose, it was a good enough place, I suppose, for us to stop there. The vital fluids, Brad. Yes, indeed. I've got a big glass of lemonade here for myself as well. So I hope you're all keeping well, by the way, and thanks very much for joining me again. And we're going to try and get back into the swing of things. And things will probably change a wee bit around me as we go. As it feels a bit weird to be in this new environment. Especially with, we've done a wee bit of decorating in our tiny little doghouse previously, So we're going to run into a new notebook today. And interestingly enough, this is a really important chapter in June, and has Frank, I suppose, seeing to it that a particular character has a particular ending here, and it's important to Frank, and we're going to have a wee look at it. And I think at some point, hopefully, if I can, let me just get it down off the shelf here. We can have a wee look about what Frank says about some of this, I think, in the Maker of June. But yes, indeed. Says, "Hi, Doc. First time watching you. Oh, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the station. We've been away for a wee while. We've been running through June, chapter by chapter in depth detail, I suppose. We're taking it apart bit by bit, and it's quite fun, hopefully. And feel free to chirp in with any ideas or anything at all, really. And it tends to take us in to quite a few different places, I think. Which is fun. And interestingly enough, it's a very busy time for science fiction and fantasy, I think. There's an awful lot of stuff that's appearing out there online. And I suppose there's even been a wee bit, just before we get started, I'll maybe pop on and do a wee live broadcast about this shortly, but we've lost a couple of sort of notable people within the science fiction world, I suppose. One being Jean-Luc Godard this week at the age of 91, um, who's particularly notable, I suppose, for Alphaville, which I think is quite an influential film. And I suppose, on the other hand, we've also lost Martin Barker, who's a science fiction academic. For myself, growing up reading certain books, particularly about British comics, I suppose. He wrote a particularly good book on action comics and the whole worth looking into. Actually, if anybody's not familiar with Martin Barker and his works, um, I think was lately involved in things like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, and how audiences react to I suppose certain types of material. I think is particularly interesting. But his book on action comics is brilliant. And I said not to jump away off topic here, but we've quite a lot going on at the minute. So hopefully we'll maybe do a wee episode, something like that, within the next week or so, just to run through a few wee things about these people and chat about what's going on in science fiction. And there's Bojack saying, welcome, if we're pronouncing that right, AHM. Maybe it's just AHM, I don't know. And there's Joseph Smith saying, hey, hi, Joseph, thank you very much for joining us. So, as usual, I suppose, just running off topic a wee bit there, but it happens with all things science fiction, and particularly with Dune. I've got 2 notebooks to work with tonight, so we'll just get ourselves organized. And in terms of where we're starting in the book, as I said, we finished at the halfway point. I made a point of of noting on the book that within this edition that I'm using, which we've been talking quite a lot about in the past there, but it's rather error prone. Page 288 to 289 pretty much represents the halfway point of the book, which we've written down there. So just over that, then starting is with chapter 30, and as usual, we have an epigraph from the Princess Irulan. So where we're starting tonight is with right in the middle of the book, and this chapter begins, and I'll just read it. This Fremen religious adaptation, then, is the source of what we now recognize as the pillars of the universe, whose Quizara Tafwid are among us all with signs and proofs and prophecy. They bring us the Arrakis mystical fusion, whose profound beauty is typified by the stirring music built on the old forms but stamped with the new awakening. Who has not heard and been deeply moved by the old man's hymn? And then we get this old man's hymn. And here we go, I'll just run through it here. I drove my feet through a desert whose mirage fluttered like a host. Voracious for glory, greedy for danger, I roamed the horizons of Al-Kulab, watching time-level mountains in its search and in its hunger for me. And I saw the sparrows swiftly approach, bolder than the onrushing wolf. They spread in the tree of my youth. I heard the flock in my branches and was caught on their beaks and claws. So there we go. That's from Arrakis Awakening by the Princess Irulan. Excuse me. And of course, this chapter begins really. This is Liet Kynes that we're going to be looking at here. But he's going to be introduced as the man. Joseph Smith, looks like we have a new book area. Joseph, I've never been able to squeeze half my books. I've had my books in different houses. I could spin the camera a wee bit around, I suppose, but we've got more down here, more over here, more over there. And I have don't get me started, but I need taller bookshelves and bigger rooms, I think. But trying to get some of the stuff. Yeah, trying to get a lot more of our science fiction. We're always trying to grab a book or talk about a book, I suppose, particularly in relation to what we're looking at off the shelves. And half the time it's down. Well, I don't have a downstairs anymore. Put it that way. So everything's gone a bit horizontal here. There's Cynthia saying, "Hi Doc, welcome back. Thank you very much, Cynthia. It's great to be back, and I'm really happy to be back here doing this. To be honest with you." It's we're getting there. We're I suppose it's a moving into this bungalow, I suppose, but it's my family home. I'm returned to it. And I've moved towns as well, and I've actually returned to the town of my birth and all of this stuff. So it's all about You know. But yeah, so I've got my guitars in a rack at the side here. We've got a few bits and pieces behind me. You might notice the face masks if you can see them. Um, are from Tunisia, were made, I believe, by Bedouin craftsmen. I might be totally wrong there, but they're a gift from my father and mother whenever they went there. And I thought, yeah, I haven't got the old hammer and nails out yet to get them on the wall, but they're rather cool. They're made of, I'm not too sure what they're made of, but leather or some kind of skin or something. But they're very cool. And they remind me very much of the Fremen. So yeah, it's all a wee bit. I just thought maybe just to get on with things and really get back into it, and try and get ourselves going with a regular book club again. For anyone who is joining us, by the way, we do put all of these videos up on a playlist on our science fiction station as well. So ultimately, as we get through this, they'll all be there, and you can backtrack. If you're joining us fresh, you can backtrack. There's 29 videos up there so far. So we have this. It's interesting. This our first little epigraph, and it's a bit of an odd one, I think. But talking about the Fremen religious adaptation, and we'll see what. I suppose we'll get more insight into it by the time we get through this chapter, and particularly, and I suppose there's this idea within Dune that religion, I suppose the religious adaptation to all aspects of life is a survival one, I suppose, in this book. And it's also pretty much how, first of all, I suppose, well, ultimately we must think of it as the missionary, a protective motive, how would I put it, influences the Fremen, and then how the Kynes family are able to use that. And we're going to see some of, I suppose, the Kynes family's thinking in this chapter. This is one of those chapters that whenever we started doing the book club, June, there was a little conversation. Somebody asked me, are we going to begin with Appendix 1, which is a little mini adventure of Pardo Kynes? And the answer, I suppose, is I wanted us to hit the book in the order that it was presented. But Appendix 1 would make almost how would we put it, like a really good prologue for Dune, I think. But like, the way a James Bond film starts with a little adventure before the main adventure begins. It's the end of the previous story, that kind of thing. Pardon me, that be me that asked, says Brad. Yes, indeed. Well, this is the chapter really that ultimately we're going to have to lift and look I suppose, next to that appendix. And whenever we get there, folks, hopefully I'll remember, but this is the chapter that we're going to backtrack and use to sort of look at Appendix 1 hand in hand. I think that they go well together. And this is all really about Herbert's idea of Western man's problems, I suppose, that they inflict. The systemic thinking of Western man, the problems that Western man in particular, or as Herbert sees it, I suppose, right throughout the ages, how they go about interacting with their environment in particular, Apologies, folks. As always, my throat's a bit dry. Let me take a wee sip of lemonade. Makes me wonder what Fremen art would look like. Well, it's a good point, Joseph. I imagine it would look like, for example, Bedouin art, but it would be heavily influenced by, I suppose, the animals and the flora and fauna, if you like, of their environment. Rolanda Salas' post-birthday gift. Howdy, Rolanda. Thanks for joining us. Was it your birthday, Rolando? Happy birthday, if it was. I'm at S-Doc. So good to see you. Thank you very much, guys. I've been a wee bit nervous, actually, about doing this tonight, but I think I'll be just fine. Excuse me. Well, I thought my bad throat would have left me. But I think it's just my throat always gets a bit as I start doing these things, So, a bizarre little epigraph And we have a few things that were, let's just get it open in front of us. So the Fremen religious adaptation then is the source of what we now recognize as the pillars of the universe. Now, I thought that was probably a reference to the 5 pillars of Islam. And then we're told that whose Quasara Tafwid are among us all with signs and proofs and prophecies, all the things of the mystical, if you like. It's a nice little bit that reminds me on Excalibur. Or is it, they go out looking for the Holy Grail, and was it signs, omens, portents, which I think is a particularly good set of words there. But we have signs, proofs, prophecy. It's very, very similar thing. The Quasara then are the priesthood. Tafwid, just in terms of our language, I suppose, my understanding is from the Arabic word to delegate. And of course, there's quite a lot about whenever we get to it. Let's just see if there's any reference to it within the terminology of the Imperium. But whenever we get to Dune Messiah, we really get to look at the Quasarate, if you like, in detail. And that's particularly the book that I suppose that examines the nature of priesthoods, and I suppose power systems that develop around a particular leader, if you like. Let's have a look. MNOPQ. Bear with me. So the Quasara Tafwid within Dune simply says, in the terminology of the Imperium, Fremen priests after Muad'Dib. So there we go. We do have a wee reference to it there. And then we're told that the priests bring us this Arakian or Arakian mystical fusion, whose profound beauty is typified by the stirring music built on the old forms. So, but it's been stamped with the new awakening. So that's kind of interesting, and is suggestive of the use of myth. But essentially, it's sort of saying that there's old music, old forms, etc. around, but we've taken those and slapped a new kind of Muad'Dib type slant on it, if you like. And remember that we're reading texts that are written from the future by Princess Irulan, and that they're, I suppose, heavily, as we've noted, they're propaganda usually. So we have this stamped with the new awakening, and then an example of this is given: who has not heard and been deeply moved by the old man's hymn? And we get a bit of it. And as I said, we got this: I drove my feet through a desert whose mirage fluttered like a host, voracious for glory, greedy for danger. I roamed the horizons of Al Kulab. That was a phrase I've been trying to have to look up, and I didn't have much success. I've written "not sure" next to it. I have that Kulab is little dog, which is similar, I suppose. Words like cuchulainn, for example, in Irish, which coos the from that part of the word is the term for dog or hound. Excuse me. So I wasn't too sure on that, and usually we like to try and figure out some words here. And I suppose within the text, the other thing that was noticeable, I suppose, notable, was, and I saw the sparrows swiftly approach, bolder than the onrushing wolf. They spread in the tree of my youth. I heard the flock in my branches and was caught on their beaks and claws. So I tried to have a wee look, and how do we think about sparrows in mythology, etc. And within Greek mythology, sparrows are associated with Aphrodite. They're to do with love, and particularly lustful love. But there's also a couple of references within the New Testament to sparrows, which are kind of interesting. One is Matthew 10:29, and the other is Luke 12 verses 6 to 7. They're kind of reiterations or variations of the same thing, I suppose. Let me just look one of them up. No pun intended. Let's see. So, are not two sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your father? is the King James version of Matthew 10:29. And Luke 12, see, 12, 6 and 7. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, yet not one of them is forgotten by God? Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered, etc. This kind of thing. Sparrow, my own opinion, also is associated with in European mythology, I suppose, but it's a bird that's associated with death. So in this case, as much as we have sparrows mentioned in the song, of course, the birds that are going to be in the passage are hawks. So we get the sense that the old man, if this is an old man's hymn, and it's possibly from Fremen culture. This is possibly a person who's been left to the desert as part of the Fremen way, if we like. The mirage fluttered like a host, hallucinating. Roamed the horizons of Al-Kalab, watching time-level mountains in its search and its hunger for me. And I saw the sparrows swiftly approach, bolder than the on-rushing wolf. They spread in the tree of my youth. I heard the flock in my branches and was caught on their beaks and claws. Now, at the same time, this, and I don't know what you guys think. I'm happy to hear your opinions about it. I think the old man's hymn could well be about Liet Kynes. It's possible. So there we go. And as we go through this chapter, the lyrics, I suppose, of the old man's hymn kind of do echo what's happening to Liet Kynes. So there we go. So let's get into the chapter, shall we? Well, hey, let's see. So Liet Kynes, and first of all, of course, this is Liet, but we don't know that to start with. And how he's described for the first 2 times, I suppose, within the chapter, he's the man. And he's quite literally the man, not just figuratively. So the man crawled across a dune top, and he's crawling. So this man's not standing. And we're told he's a mote caught in the glare of the noon sun. And I've written, So to be out, we should know enough by now, with our immersion in the world of Arrakis, that to be out in the midday sun is not a good thing at all. Or is it they say only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun? So not a good thing on this planet. Let me see. So let's just run through it. He was dressed only in the torn remnants of a jubba cloak, his skin bared to the heat through the tatters. The hood had been ripped from the cloak, but the man had fashioned a turban from a torn strip of cloth. Wisps of sandy hair protruded from it, matched by a sparse beard and thick brows. Beneath the blue within blue eyes, remains of a dark stain spread down his cheeks. A matted depression across his mustache and beard showed where a still soot tube had marked out its path from nose to catch pockets. So if we've been paying a wee bit of attention here, there's probably enough details for us, especially as we know what actions happened previously, that this is probably Liet Kynes. But Herbert's keeping it a wee bit from us. And by the sense of it, he's most likely, as I said, injured as well. The man stopped half across the dune crest, arms stretched down the slip face. Blood had clotted on his back and on his arms and legs, and we have patches of yellow-grey sand clung to the wounds. Slowly he brought his hands under him, pushed himself to his feet, stood there swaying, and even in this almost random action, there remained a trace of once precise movement. Now, almost random, I think, is interesting. This man is clearly injured. Almost random, therefore, means not random, is the way I would look at it. We're getting a sense, and I suppose there's a few things to pay attention to before we get him to introduce himself here. But in particular, a lot focuses on Kynes' hand here. And we've talked about what the hand represents, particularly within Dune, and represents agency, in particular power. So we're going to the weakness of Kynes here, the physical decline of him in the environment of the planet. There's going to be a wee joke made in this chapter, and it's really Frank Herbert, Frank Herbert making his own comment here, and we'll point it out when we get to it. But this man's on his way to his death, and it's an important death, and the person sending him there is the author of this book. So he starts off with, "I am Liet Kynes," he said, addressing himself to the empty horizon, and his voice is a hoarse caricature of the strength it had known. "I am His Imperial Majesty's Planetologist, planetary ecologist for Arrakis. I am steward of this land." And his voice is a whisper. So within this chapter, his voice slowly, I suppose, decreases in strength. He gets a little surge of strength as he builds it up, but we're seeing him get weaker and weaker as we go through this. And initially, what we are going to look at is that essentially Liet Kynes' thought processes, ecological thought processes, planetological thought processes, slowly transfer from his own thoughts to, I suppose, a phantom of his father's as he gets more and more delirious with the heat. Which is pretty interesting. But we're also going, and his father's going to lecture at him here. But really, it's probably himself talking to himself. Very Irish thing to say there, wasn't it? Excuse me. Yeah, I've got a little drop of beer left. I might as well finish it. So, yeah, and then he stumbles. He falls sideways along the crusty surface, windward face, and here we go. His hands dug feebly at the sand. And I've just written here, he has no agency. And I've written the statement seems what in the face of this word. I'm not too sure what I was wondering about that there. Let me just have a wee quick look. We're at number 3 here. And his hands dug feebly into the sand, and again he thinks this, "I'm steward of this land." Oh, well, I suppose backing up a wee bit, I've written there next to that, "Okay, if you say so." Excuse me. And I've just put, echoing, I suppose, Paul Atreides thought about people taking a lot upon themselves. But this is the point where Liet realizes that he's semi-delirious. Where are we? I'll just read that. Hang on. So he realized that he was semi-delirious and that he should dig himself into the sand, find the relatively cool underlayer, and cover himself with it. But he could still smell the rank, semi-sweet esters of pre-spice. Oh, sorry, of a pre-spice pocket somewhere underneath this sand. So, as much as he realizes that he's semi-delirious, the wee thing I've noticed is that I suppose the idea of, we've talked about skills, I suppose, previously, that his sense of knowledge and skills are still there, but he's going to be too feeble to really, I suppose, apply them, too weak to apply them, and the circumstances that there are options of hope for him here, but we'll go through them logically, and of course there'll be a problem with each one of them. So things aren't really working for him here. But I just thought it was worth noting that we talked about people with skills before, in terms of how they use them at survival points. And here's a man in quite a harsh, I suppose, situation, but so physically weak that his knowledge isn't going to be of much help to him. Cynthia saying, the description "empty horizon" looks back at the old man's hymn. Here, empty may mean no assistance, life, or is it the advance in time for the poem "Time empties horizons by wearing down mountains"? Yeah, I don't know. I had a bit of bother with the poem. Let me see. I drove, so the old man's hymn, it's a hymn about an old man. "I drove my feet through the desert whose mirage fluttered like a host, voracious for glory, greedy for danger. I roamed the horizons of Al Kulab." It would be helpful if we knew what that meant. Watching time level mountains. in its search and its hunger for me. And let me see. Empty may mean no assistance life, or is it advance in time? The poem Time Empties Horizons by Wearing Down Mountains. It's part of the old riddle, isn't it? That time wears all things down. There's a few things in there. I suppose time. There's a point where Pardo's discussing the time frame. I think later on in this chapter, and it's about where it occurs over a time frame where it seems to be a natural phenomenon, something like that. I think we'll get to that, Cynthia, whenever we get there. Empty may mean no assistance. Let me see. Empty horizon. Searching its hunger for me. Yeah, I thought the thing was fundamentally about death. And again, the sparrows swiftly approach, bolder than the on-rushing wolf. He's the idea that they're caught on their beaks and claws. There is something else about, I suppose, there's a tree of my youth. Things like that. But I think it's about the passage of time and age and so on. Empty life, or is the advance in time for the poem Time Empties Horizons by Wearing Down Mountains. What is it? There's a Latin phrase. What is it? I'm sure you're all familiar with Tempus Fugit, which is time flees or time flies. Not like that, by the way. Doesn't as in to be on the run, to be like a fugitive, to flee. But the other one is what is it? Tempus edax rerum. I think is it. Time is the devourer of all things. And I suppose what's I get what you're saying, Cynthia. You're kind of making me think of Percy Bysshe Shelley's Ozymandias, which is which I think is a very interesting poem, and I think that it's a fundamentally flawed poem. What is it? Let me see. Let's bring it up on the screen very quickly. Just that wee bit of it I'm thinking on. If anybody's not read Ozymandias, it's a rather good sonnet. You should check it out. And there's two poems called Ozymandias. Here we go. Well, it's that idea, isn't it? I suppose. Look upon my works. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone level sands stretch far away. But at the start of that, I suppose, with the two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert, near them on the sun. The idea, I suppose, that time. I suppose the idea of the poem is that even Ozymandias, that time will wear down his achievements and so on and so forth. That's the problem with the poem. Is as much as it might be true for other people, it's not true for him. You can go see his stuff today. Ozymandias is Ramesses, isn't it? Ramesses II, Ramesses the Great. Pretty sure. And the other person to have the name Ozymandias is as a nickname. I think it's Greek and it means King of Heaven or King of the Air. Is Alexander the Great, but I think he was styling himself on Ramesses. I don't know if that answers your question, Cynthia. I'm not too sure, to be honest. But yeah, time and death, I suppose, and time is part of their plan, isn't it? So yeah, he's not going to have a particularly good time here, as old Liet Kynes. And he knows what he should do, but as I said, he should dig himself into the sand, find a cool underlayer, cover himself with it. But there's a problem, and it's a big but. So here we go. There's a problem that he can still smell the rank, semi-sweet esters of a pre-spice pocket somewhere beneath the sand. Now, interesting enough, rank, semi-sweet. For those who don't know, esters are chemical compounds, and I've gone to Wikipedia for this, but just to run through it for you, they're chemical compounds that are derived from an oxo acid, or which is inorganic or organic, in which one oxygen hydrogen hydroxyl group is replaced by an oxygen alkyl or alkoxy group. For example, substitution reaction of a carboxylic acid and an alcohol. Now, just the point that I wanted to make here was that it says within that they typically have a pleasant smell. So if we're not sure what esters are, there we go. It's one of those odd little words. What I thought was quite interesting looking at it is the word itself. If we look into the etymology of it, is coined in. I'll just give you this for a wee bit of a fact. It's coined in 1848 by the German chemist Leopold Melin. That's Gmelin. I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, and probably as a contraction of the German Eisegather, or acetic ether. He's particularly notable for his books on his handbook on chemistry and Gmelin's, if that's correct, test, which is used to detect bile in urine. It's particularly useful for people who are suffering from jaundice, this kind of thing. So it's another little term, and it points us directly to a real life scientist. And my understanding is that Leopold Melin had a fair bit to do with researching digestive juices, etc. And that might not really mean anything to anybody, but of course, the product, if we know a little bit more as we go about the worms, and in fact, we're going to learn a little bit about it here in this chapter, it actually makes sense that this term is used here, and it should point us towards this scientist. And quite a lot of things in Dune do that. So there you go, just a wee bit of trivia, but it's an interesting. He's an interesting chap. Matt S says, one of the coolest science fiction pieces I've read was about a galactic archive called the Ozymandias Protocol, which was kind of collecting samples of everything that ever existed to lock them away. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah, the idea is something similar to seed banks and things like that. I suppose I would be what you would call an end of the world library, if you like. I've got the correct books here to restart civilization. So if there's an apocalypse, you should mark where I'm at and go, there you go. He's got some good books. And you don't need electricity to use them. Well, I suppose. Not during the day anyway. Yeah. Ozymandias, the poem, the one that everybody knows, Matt, is the one by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Excuse me. What a lot of people don't know is it was sort of written as a part of a competition, if you like, with another poet. So there are two sonnets called Ozymandias, and they're quite similar. And I think they're based around a museum trip. But if you look into, let me just make sure I'm not talking utter nonsense here. There we go. Yeah, I'm not talking nonsense. So Ozymandias, of course, is Ramesses II, Ramesses the Great. A very interesting character. And look upon his works, you mighty, and enjoy, really. And go see them in their location. They still stand. And that's the irony, I suppose, of the poem. You have the Nagamati Library of Science Fiction. I'm hoping to get this organized. I've got a lot of old stuff here, and I've got bits and pieces. I have I've got some science books. I've got some education books, and I've got a lot of classical stuff in here. But we've got all sorts. We've got our daily dreads. We've got some new comic books and stuff. And interestingly enough, I suppose I picked up a new. I must have a wee chat about it another time. But I picked up as a gift to. Picked up this recently. Is the Taxidermist from the world of Judge Dredd. It appears both in, I suppose, the collected 2080 and Judge Dredd magazine, different stories. and I really enjoyed reading that. It was an old favourite of mine, and I didn't realise that they'd actually done a wee ending to the story as well. So it was really, really good. I honestly only know Ozymandias from The Watchmen. Yeah, the Ozymandias in The Watchmen is modelling himself on Alexander the Great. So there you go. But it's one of the things that it's a nickname and that Alexander took upon himself, I suppose. But the idea was to model himself on Ramesses II, I believe. You'll get a similar idea, sort of, in the Dune series with the god Emperor. When he chooses one personality out of all of the male, I suppose, other memory, to be that, to keep all the rest of the personalities in control, to be one dominating personality to help him on his golden path, and that personality is Harem. Now, God, what do you call harem? The Greeks call harem Cheops, which is I'll spell it for you. Hang on, it's oh, there you go, like that, Cheops. Excuse me, Cheops. Goodness, what's he called? Sorry, hang on, Cheops. Khufu. That's it. Sorry. Ah, dear, oh dear. It's funny when you know people by different names and different, from different cultures. Anyway, Cheops is Khufu, and he's the builder of the Great Pyramid. So he's the actual, he's the personality that the god Emperor takes on. Believe it or not, but yeah, it's an interesting thing actually. Yeah, I love that poem. I'm trying to think of who said Tempus Edax Rerum, and I'm wondering is that Virgil or something like that? It sounds like him. Let's see. Not the wall. Hang on. Go away. Quote. Who said it? Ovid. Oh well, there you go. Somewhere in the right empire. There you go. It's Ovid. There you go. What was it? Tempus Edax Rerum. Time is the devourer of all things. Yes, indeed. Sorry, we're jumping away there, aren't we, folks? So, where are we? Just so we see. Yes, the esters, this smell, this rank, semi-sweet smell. We had a wee bit of a stop and chat about that, and this gives Kynes insight, I suppose, into the peril that he's in. If his physical condition is not perilous enough, he knew the peril within the fact more certainly than any other Fremen. Wow. And I've written again, high opinion of himself. Sees himself as both Fremen and His Majesty's Planetologist, conflicted duality, two masters, etc. When he was saying who he was earlier, I suppose, I am Liet Kynes. I am His Imperial Majesty's Planetologist, and I've written next to that property, planetary ecologist for Arrakis, and then I am steward of this land. So just the way he talked about himself. The idea that he serves two masters, I suppose, is a thing that's put into Dune. And we get that with Duncan, Idaho as well. So if we can smell the pre-spice mass, what that means is that the gases deep under the sand are nearing an explosive pressure. So that's why this is bad, and that's why he knows the peril that he's in. Now, let me see. I was just trying to check, have we got to the point that he realizes that he's delirious? I was just wondering if I skipped past that yet. No, he does. He realizes, we're already there. He realizes that he's semi-delirious. Okay. So, yeah, it's not good, and he realizes he's got to get away from here. Again, the skills, the thinking, the survival, how to live on this planet, it's all there in the mind, but it's not happening. His hands, again, are weak, scrabbling motions. He's making weak scrabbling motions along the dune face. So he's, again, not able to do much. And this is where we get this beginning of this thought process, I suppose. A thought spread across his mind, clear and distinct. The real wealth of a planet is in its landscape. How we take part in that basic source of civilization, agriculture. Okay, so he's giving himself lessons on take your pick, ecology, civilization, agriculture. And it's an odd thing to be thinking about, I suppose, if you think about it, when you're in a bit of bother and you're dying, you may want to be thinking more about your own survival. And of course, he thinks how strange this is. How strange that his mind long fixed on a how strange it was that his mind long fixed on a single track could not get off that track. So his mind's focused on this, absolutely. And it probably is strange, but yeah, we're going to see. I think that he's not in a good shape, and we're going to get a bit more description about, I suppose, what the sun's doing to him shortly. But agriculture, how we take part in that basic source of civilization. And he thought how strange it was that his mind, long fixed on a single track, could not get off that track. The Harkonnen troopers had left him here without water or still suit, thinking a worm would get him if the desert didn't. They had thought it amusing to leave him alive to die by inches at the impersonal hands of his planet. Now, that's where we want to stop, right there. That line there. And I've just written next to it where it says they, and I just put Frank. Okay, take the word they out and go, Frank had thought it amusing to leave him alive to die by inches at the impersonal hands of his planet. So this is just to point this out to anybody who's not aware of it. Let me just see if I can find it. But it was really important for Frank Herbert that the planetologist, and we have pointed this out before, is killed by his planet. Because of everything, I suppose, that he represents. Let me just see if I can find this. Let's see. In fact, it might be quicker for me to just bring this up. Hang on a wee second, folks. I'll just bring this up here and look it up. Right. And find. Right, bear with me a wee second. There we go. Right. So, 4, 3, let me see. I'll just give you the wee bit that I have here on this. It's my belief for a long time, this is Frank Herbert, it's my belief for a long time that man inflicts himself on his environment. In Western culture, we tend to think that we can overcome nature by mechanical means. We accumulate enough data and we subdue it. This is a one-pointed vision of man, because if you really start looking at man, Western man, you'll see that you could cut him right down the middle and he's blind on that backside. So just to continue on with this is within my own work. It says it was for this reason that Herbert claimed it was very important that the one man who represents the viewpoint of a Western man, namely Liet Kynes, the Imperial Planetologist, is actually killed by the planet, or at least its environment, that he seeks to tame and transform. There we go. Now, I want to just bear with me a wee second. Well, this is just actually some of the stuff I have here. There we are. So, yeah, just to read, this one's from the maker of Dune. Just a little bit more on what Kynes represents. Western man has assumed that all you need for any problem is enough force, and that there is no problem which won't submit to this approach, even the problem of our own ignorance. This assumption, you see, throws it out the window right there, because it is an asinine assumption, and the basic fallacy of Western man's approach to living. Now, I'm not saying that we should immediately drop this and adopt a Vedanta way of thinking. We need what I would call a science of wisdom. So we can get to that as we go. But just to that's where we're at really with in terms of what Herbert thinks of Western man's approach to ecology and what Kynes represents and why he's going to die this way. And we're going to get a lot of lecturing from, I suppose, the ghost of his father shortly. And it's not going to be smart, I suppose. There's Don Ragnar saying, I always felt that Liet Kynes was Frank Herbert's avatar within the Dune universe, a way of inserting himself into his own story based on his own interest in geology, agriculture, and ecosystems. Interesting idea, Don. I think that Kynes represents, particularly in the banquet scene, he's a mouthpiece for a lot of Herbert's ideas. But I suppose the point is, again, he's deceiving us, as always. So I personally, the character that's probably Frank Herbert within, I get what you're saying. Frank Herbert's avatar is the unseen, omniscient narrator. I think that we've talked a wee bit about there's a mystery within Dune, and we'll get to it at the end of the book. But it's who's behind the Bene Gesserit program, and it's not the Bene Gesserit. There's another mysterious force, but also it could be. I think what is it? What do we call them? Oh goodness, my head. Daniel and Marty, isn't it? God, I hope I've got that right. I think possibly there's a wee bit of that there, but yeah, there's a fair bit by Frank. This in particular, Don, is very good for some of this stuff, and the reference I had there was that there's also discussions about that. I think the book's called The Road to Dune. So, what Kynes represents, what the I don't think so in that sense. I suppose the point we'll get to is that whenever we get to the appendix, Don, the Kynes family are not nice people at all, and they're absolutely manipulating and using the Fremen in the same way that everyone else is. In fact, that Liet Kynes is a product of Pardo's desire to manipulate the Fremen themselves, that he needs a Fremen son. And it's not very pleasant when we actually, if we step outside of this strange feudal universe to look at it, it's not pleasant at all. So the Kynes family in particular, I think, are all, we're going to hear about this, heroes as well to the Fremen, but they're also people who deliberately manipulate them. Still don't understand why Danny left this out. I think there's bits of it in the film, and I think I would need to look at it again, Joseph. But I think that there's elements of this and part of Appendix 1 that are integrated into Jamas's character, the hallucination of Jamas. But I haven't looked at the film in a wee while, and I've got to the point where I've decided I must take it apart with a fine tooth comb and have a wee go looking, I suppose, I didn't like the new Dune film. Don, I had a really bad experience watching it. It was awful, but it looked awful in the cinema that I saw it on. I've watched it at home since. I don't know. I'm going to keep judgment open until I see the second part, but I'm not a fan, and it's well, no, I wouldn't say that. I had a bit of a problem with it, but I thought the ecological message was lost, I think, as everybody knows here. But in terms of the versions that we've seen so far, I think it's the least authentic, to be honest with you. Cynthia says, in chapter 15, Halleck described Kynes as having a precise way of speaking, clipped off, no fuzzy edges, razor apt. Much of this fits Kynes as we see him in this scene. Yes. Isn't that how we were? It's what he's lost, isn't it? I suppose. His voice is a hoarse caricature of the strength it had known. He's a good speaker. There's Bojack saying me neither, Don. Yeah, I think I don't know. I suppose people have had time to digest it and take a look at it. Maybe have a. I always think it's best to sort of take your time with these things, you know. Um, but yeah, I've tried. I suppose the question is how. For me, can I watch it again and again? And the answer is no. Whereas I can watch David Lynch's over and over again, and I can watch the TV miniseries over and over again, but I haven't been able to bring myself to watch it. I think I watched it about 3, 4 times, and the fourth time I was skipping through it. Um, I don't know. I think there's a lot of liberties with it, but I think also, Don, the biggest problem with it is the. I think I've said this before as well. I think the minor characters in Dune are really, really important, and in particular the Mentats, um, Peter de Vries and Thufir Hawat, and they're not well. Thufir's not really a minor character, if you like, but and especially characters like well, Janice and uh, I suppose one of my favourites is Charlotte Mapes. I think is a fantastic character. I thought they were all badly underused, barely noticeable on the screen, and I thought that was a shame, you know. But yeah, stick with the books. Quite right. Didn't like the scene in the movie. Well, this scene was, I suppose, yeah, it's a good point, guys. I suppose it's the right time to talk about it. But the gender swap of Liet Kynes in the movie, here's where you see its problem. It's big problem. And I suppose if we call it an attempt at wokeness, then you it's got to be obvious, not just to me, how badly that's misfired and backfired here, especially in a book that has lots of gender swapping anyway. Um, Not needed, I think. But yeah, what Kynes represents, excuse me, and I thought I thought the death was phallic actually of the character. I just thought it was a bit bizarre. And I didn't think it lent anything to the movie whatsoever. It's insight to us, the reader, I suppose. Within a cinematic audience, it would be the viewer and the listener. But a lot of what, yeah, it's as important as the banquet scene here, because it really is saying that this thinking's not correct. And it's a moment of realization of a man's life and his work. And if you think about it in terms of, it's a generational realization, you know, that this is his father's work before him, and that we got it wrong. It's not what we're about. And again, the start of the epigraph, I think, where am I? Oh no, sorry, wrong thing I'm thinking on. Just the beginning of Keynes's thoughts about agriculture, you know, and how we live with the world, I suppose. But yeah. Anyway, I suppose the point was, I think Frank thought it highly amusing. Not well. I said we could interchange the word Frank there with the Harkonnen would leave him alive to die by inches at the impersonal hands of his planet. But it's Frank's absolute deliberate intent for this character to be killed this way. And it's just, I suppose it's a moment of realization for someone at their just prior to their death. It's a bit like, you know, I don't know, is it, what do you call him, Zord? Is it in the in the Fifth Element? You know, that, oh no, you figured it out just too late, I suppose. Um, and I suppose the death of Liet Kynes can sometimes be looked at as a bit silly, as a little bit of bathos, possibly. The way it was done, I think, in the TV series was I am a desert creature, but it just explodes. Um, you know, obviously with the spice, but it's interesting, I suppose. But yeah, the character of Liet Kynes was badly flawed. I think the actress was fine, you know, very good. Nothing to do with the actress, but the role was not constructed correctly. It wasn't written right, and yeah, very, very important character for the story. And we're going to see here really what we've been learning about ecology on this planet, in this unusual world that we're reading about, has mostly been taught to us through this character. And that should tell us something. Whoa, this guy's going to get to the end of it, realize he was wrong. So what we've learned so far, is that wrong also? We should be questioning things, I suppose. So I went with a little bit of anthropomorphism there, by the way, for the planet having impersonal hands, I suppose. And then he's thinking, a little bit of bravado here. I think that the Harkonnens always did find it difficult to kill Fremen. He thought, we don't die easily. I should be dead now. I will be dead soon, but I can't stop being an ecologist. And I actually thought that was kind of funny, because I nearly went, don't you mean planetologist? But there we go. And we get this voice that appears. And of course, this voice is, the highest function of ecology is understanding consequences. Frank Herbert, Dune, page 291 in my book, to let you know that this is actually the highest function of science, is to give us an understanding of consequences, which comes from Paul Bigelow Sears' Where There Is Life. And in my edition, it's on page 105. So this is Herbert. And interestingly enough, if you have a wee look at this, you'll hear Herbert talking about, I think it's this book. I don't know where I got that quotation. And he'd like to reference it. And I think Timothy O'Reilly, who edits this book very, very much, does indeed reference it for him. So within this book, he says the quote comes from Paul Sears' book on ecology, Where There Is Life, and it's the highest function of ecology is the understanding of consequences. If anybody's really interested, if you want to know where probably the connection to Frank Herbert to Samuel Butler comes from, I believe it's also Paul Sears' book, because he discusses Samuel Butler's Erewhon in that same text. And it's very interesting. And it's just a little, you'd have to see it and notice it. There we go. Let me just catch up with some of your comments, folks, and make a note of where we're at, because, yeah, this is the arrival of the ghost, if you like, of Liet Kynes. Excuse me. Let's see. Was not a good scene. Oh, dude, I've watched the new one 13 times, says Joseph Smith. That's about enough. The old ones I will watch again. Yeah, I'm going to watch it again, and I suppose put it together whenever part 2 comes out. But yeah, I don't know. Brad says, when I was doing my volunteer work, I saw a guy with a shirt that said, "I am the Kwisatz Haderach." I called him out on it, but he walked on by without registering it. About a half an hour later, he came up and said no one had ever recognized it. Then told me about how he had met Frank Herbert and his son. Good times, excellent. Was I think the last one? Is it the what is it you call it, the laughing Buddha? Is it somebody had a T-shirt with this saying? Was it I have the body of a god? It's pity it's a Buddha. And I think I pointed out to him, that's not a Buddha. He's a bodhisattva. Something like that. Excellent. That's a cool anecdote, Brad, says Bojack. Don Ragnar at AHM agreed. I also don't like how the litany of fear was cited by Jessica instead of Paul. Changed the dynamic and didn't feel right. Cynthia says, precision versus accuracy. Kynes still has echoes of precision movement, thinking even though he's dying. Maybe we can see this as scientific precision compared to a more correct view of his planet stroke methods. His planet belongs to him, doesn't it? Cynthia says, Brad, great story. Absolutely. Precision versus accuracy. Sure, are they synonyms, Cynthia? I'm wondering. To be precise is to be accurate. Maybe not. Kynes still has echoes of precision movement, thinking even though he's dying. Yeah, I get the sense that the body, the mind is there, but the body can't comply. And even though he's delirious, I mean, he's pretty sharp here, isn't he? So the highest function of ecology, this voice, is understanding consequences. So the voice shocks him, of course, because he recognizes it, knows the owner of it is dead. It's the voice of his father, the planetologist before him, Pardo Kynes. We're told that his father is long dead and killed at a cave-in a place called Plaster Basin. So we're going to get this back and forth between Pardo, the ghost of Pardo Kynes, that isn't quite there. It's not visible. I suppose that we get the sense that Herbert moves us around with the description. Sort of, it's like a sound behind to the left, behind to the right, that kind of thing. Almost a sort of stereoscopic thing from Kynes' point of view, I suppose. And again, I don't know, father-son relationships. Here we go. Got yourself into quite a fix here, son. You should have known the consequences of trying to help the child of that duke. And delirious Kynes thought, yes, he is. So the voice seems to, here we go, this is this bit here. The voice seems to come from his right, and he scrapes his face on the sand, turning to look in that direction. But there's nothing except a curving stretch of Dune dancing with heat devils in the full glare of the sun. There we go, his vision's going a wee bit, heat devils. And of course, here we go. This is beginning a whole series of lectures for us, I suppose, and for Kynes. And I suppose this conversation started as his own thoughts and has, I suppose, through delirium transformed into the voice of his father. But we have to really assume it's his voice somewhere in his subconscious, I think. So life is what this is. We're going to get a wee bit of a lesson on here. Here we go. The more life there is within a system, the more niches there are for life. And of course, the voice is moving, isn't it here? And the voice came now from his left, from behind him. Why does he keep moving around? Kynes asked himself. Doesn't he want me to see him? So he knows that his father's dead. He knows that I'm delirious. But of course, the delirium has set in. Why is Dad moving around even though he's dead? Doesn't he want me to see him? Maybe not. Is this a ghost? Who knows? You can be precise and... Oh, hang on. Back up a wee bit. No, you can be precise and wrong. Precise and accurate. Let's see. Precisely wrong, I suppose. You can be precise and wrong, but you can't be accurate and wrong. I understand the word accuracy to refer more to correctness, and the word precision has more to do with technique. Good technique. Correct, says. Thank you, guys. I was just, precision, precise, accurate. I suppose precision would have an element of finesse or something like that, wouldn't it? Echoes of precision movement. You can see the sound putting to a more correct view, to a more accurate view of his planet methods. It's not just his father that gets it wrong as well, whether it's the other scientists, at least from Kynes' point of view. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I wasn't too sure about that. Where are we? Okay, so life improves the capacity of the environment to sustain life. All right, his father said. Life makes needed nutrients more readily available. It binds more energy into the system through the tremendous chemical interplay from organism to organism. So all of these, I suppose from Kynes' point of view, he keeps asking questions. I suppose the first one is, why does he keep moving around? Doesn't he want me to see him? Now we've got, why does he keep harping on the same subject? I knew that before I was 10. So these lessons that Pardo's imparting, or the ghost of Pardo's seems to be imparting upon Kynes, are things that Kynes already knows. And of course that makes sense. And he's wondering, why is he going on about these simple things? And at this point, folks, I've got to go to a new notebook, so bear with me. There we go. And I haven't got this one painted up yet, but here we are. Notebook number 3, I suppose. And I put, what's this? Smells and out of focus. We should focus on smells. So, Liet Kynes, chapter 30 continued from volume 2. Liet Kynes in the Desert Pardo lectures. And we have the Desert Hawks. Right, bear with me a second. Right. I knew that before I was 10. So, Desert hawks, carrion eaters in this land, as were most wild creatures, began to circle over him. Kynes saw a shadow pass near his hand, forced his head farther around to look upward. The birds were a blurred patch on the silver blue sky, distant flecks of soot floating above him. So we've got the arrival of these birds, and particularly these desert hawks, as we follow this action within this chapter, they're going to land quite close and be very interested in Kynes' sort of outstretched hand that he can barely move, and we get a wee bit of kind of an amusing interplay between them. But they are, of course, desert creatures, these hawks, which is going to be quite important. So, the Ghost of Pardo again. Where are we? So we are, yes, we are generalists, his father said. You cannot draw neat lines around planet-wide problems. Planetology is a cut and fit science. And again, what's he trying to tell me? Is there some consequences in particular is what this is all about that I failed to see. And I suppose this links in with Herbert's ideas of ecologists needing to be generalists, that the idea that ecology is a kind of a reasonably new scientific field, and that I suppose that it's best made up of people from different disciplines and different knowledge, but generalists are, a good use of people there, I suppose. They should be generalists. So again, his cheek slumped back against the hot sand, and he smelled the burned rock odor beneath the pre-spice gases. From some corner of logic in his mind, a thought formed. Those are carrion eater birds over me. Perhaps some of my Fremen will see them and come to investigate. So again, a wee bit possessive. They're my Fremen. And this is I suppose, Kynes' little bit of hope, and within the narrative, I suppose from our point of view, a little bit of hope for the character. I wonder, will he survive this? It gives us a little bit of suspense. So, yeah, there are carrion birds, and so the birds circling overhead, hopefully, will be assigned to the Fremen, and the Fremen will come and rescue him. He's got a little bit of hope. He hasn't given up yet. So off we go with the ghost again. To the working planetologist, his most important tool is human beings. This is Pardo. And again, our lecture, you must cultivate ecological literacy amongst the people. That's why I've created this entirely new form of ecological notation, which I've written next to that is a system. And we have to have a wee think about this idea that to the working planetologist, his most important tool is a human being. So human beings are looked at as tools. Again, Kynes' thoughts, he's repeating stuff he said to me when I was a child, and he begins to feel cool. But, and we have that but, we're told the corner of logic in his mind tells him this. The sun's overhead, you have no still suit, and you're hot. The sun is burning the moisture out of your body. It's not good. And again, his fingers claw feebly at the sand. And he curses the Harkonnens here. And it's a bit, no, they couldn't even leave me a still suit. And it seems a bit self-pitying, I suppose. But why not in this situation? So again, we get this, it's a bit of a juxtaposition, isn't it? It's kind of strange. He's trying to survive. It's just these slow movements with the hand, etc., on these dunes. And this voice, this ghost voice, keeps giving him these lessons. The presence of moisture in the air helps prevent too rapid evaporation from living bodies. Why does he keep repeating the obvious? Kynes wondered. This is what's happening to him. And we get a really interesting wee bit here, folks. I don't know what you think. This is where Kynes' imagination kicks in. And he does this a couple of times. So he's trying to think of moisture in the air and grass covering the dunes. Let me just find this wee bit here. He tried to think of moisture in the air, grass covering this dune, open water somewhere beneath him, a long quanet flowing with water across the desert and trees lining it. He had never seen water open to the sky except in text illustrations. Open water, irrigation water. It took 5,000 cubic meters of water to irrigate 1 hectare of land per growing season, he remembered. So he's thinking about moisture in the air, grass covering the dune, open water, quanets, trees, going across, all of these things he's never seen. It's a suggestion that he's not been off planet, possibly. Even as the Emperor's Imperial Planetologist. Quanets are systems for transporting water underground from wells, this kind of thing. A bit like via, they're quite interesting, sort of like via aqueducts, this kind of thing. So as much as this guy's an ecologist, wherever he's, it kind of makes you ask a few questions about where's he got his training or his education. But it seems that he hasn't been off planet. And of course, Liet Kynes is a Fremen, and his father Pardo is not. But here we go. He had never seen water open to the sky except in text illustrations. There we go. So here we get Pardo's goals, I suppose. Again, his first goal on Arrakis is Greenland provinces. We will start with these mutated poverty grasses, and when we have the moisture locked into grasslands, we'll move on to start upland forests, then a few open bodies of water, small at first, situated along lines of prevailing winds. With wind-trap moisture precipitators spaced in lines to recapture what the wind steals. I've written that's pathetic fallacy there. We must create a true sirocco, a moist wind, but we'll never get away from the necessity for wind traps. So regardless of what they do, that technology will always be required. And this is, of course, Pardo's goals for turning Arrakis into, something other than it's not, an Eden-like world. So it begins. First goal is to build up grassland provinces, mutated poverty grasses, as they're put. And then we will have moisture locked into the grasslands that move to start upland forests with a few open bodies of water. Recapture what the wind steals. So we must create a true sirocco, a moist wind that will never get away from the necessity for wind traps. So the sirocco is a Mediterranean wind. It comes up from the Sahara. It's southeasterly, I think. What's the one that comes up around Biscay? Is it Mistral? I think. Anyway, the Arabic, that comes from the Arabic word sarkaya, meaning Easter. And that wind's also known as, looked this up earlier, is also known as the Scirocco, the Ghibli, the Jugo, and the Sirach. I was wondering, is that where Studio Ghibli got its name from? Thought that was kind of interesting. It sounds quite possibly that that's the case. Don't know if anybody knows. So here we go. Always lecturing me. Why doesn't he shut up? Can't he see I'm dying? Just God, give me some peace, this kind of thing. And of course, I think this is quite funny. It's a wee bit of light humor in this chapter, where the ghost sort of, I suppose, responds that yes, I can't see that you're dying. Yeah, you will die too if you don't get off that bubble forming right now underneath you. It's there, and you know it. You can smell the pre-spiced gases. You know the little makers are beginning to lose some of their water into the mass. So we're getting a wee bit of an understanding about what's going on here with the spice, etc. We have a pre-spice mass underneath. the sand. Pardo's sort of, again, it's really Liet talking to himself, I think, here, but you can smell it. You know, these what do we call them, esters? That sort of, what was it, funky kind of bittersweet smell that he was getting before. The little makers are beginning to lose some of their water into the mass. So that's part of, I suppose, the life cycle of the worms, and a lot to do with why Arrakis is the way it is. And Kynes, the thought of the water beneath him is maddening. He imagined it now. And again, so his imagination's kicking in here. You can imagine it sealed off in strata of porous rock by the leathery half-plant, half-animal little makers. And the thin rupture that was pouring a cool stream of clearest, pure liquid, soothing water into, and then a pre-spice mass. I think that's quite funny. It's a nice wee bit of writing. Just to run through it again, the thought of that water, if you think about poor old Liet's situation here, beneath it was maddening, maddening. He imagined it sealed off in strata of porous rock by the leathery, half-plant, half-animal little makers, and the thin rupture that was, the description here, it must be tantalizing to him, pouring a cool stream of clearest, pure liquid, soothing, soothing water, lots of adjectives there, into a pre-spice mass. And it's, I've written next this, is this a eureka moment for him? And I don't think so. I'm not too sure. He's either thinking about something with the pre-spice mass, is he getting it, or, and I think he has this already, it's just the danger of it, the peril. It's a pre-spice mass, you know. He inhaled, smelling the rank sweetness, the odor, much richer around him than it had been. And if the smell's getting stronger, I suppose the idea really that we're going to get a bit of an increase in urgency and an increase in tension here. So Kynes pulled himself to his knees, and we're told he heard a bird screech with the hurried flapping of wings. Right. And of course, his thoughts, this is Spice Desert, he thought. There must be Fremen around about, even in the day sun. Surely they can see the birds and will investigate. So it's this hope again. It's the same hope that he's had previously. And it's this, the birds, they will indicate that, you know, there's food. Someone's about to die below, basically, and they're going to get food. The Fremen should investigate that. And interestingly enough, he says that there must be Fremen about even in the day sun. So there are some kind of Fremen scouts who are not, who do travel or move about during the day. So the birds, birds are a warning, I suppose, but they're a threat and a hope, I think, to Pardo, which I think is an interesting juxtaposition. They're a dichotomy in that sense. They're both things, but they represent very much a threat to him, as in they're going to eat him. But they're a hope for him at the same time, that if he can hold out long enough, some Fremen might see him. So here we go, some more thoughts from Pardo. Movement across the landscape is a necessity for animal life, his father said. Nomad peoples follow the same necessity. Lines of movement adjust the physical needs for water, food, minerals. We must control this movement now, align it for our purposes. Again, the words I've sort of noted there, control this movement, align it for our purposes. I've written an expletive next to it. It's just and of course Kynes goes, "Shut up, old man," muttered. And here we go. We must do a thing on Arrakis never before attempted for an entire planet. It's a wee bit hyperbolic. We must use man as a constructive ecological force, inserting adapted terraform life, plant here, an animal there, a man in that place, to transform the water cycle, to build a new kind of landscape. And again, Kynes, shut up, and it's just a croak. It's Quagmire saying the spice must flow. It must indeed. In this case, it's the spice will blow, I think, shortly, Quagmire. So Pardo says, was lines of movement that gave us the first clue to the relationship between the worms and spice. So if we just think about what he's saying there, it is the idea of using mankind as geological agents, if you like, as forces for ecological change. But Pardo has described human beings, man as a tool to be used, and now we have as a constructive ecological force. But it's quite a sort of it's a bit imperialist, isn't it? It's a bit fascist. It's just, I'm going to use people as tools. It's pretty vile. So let me see, just to catch up there. We must do a thing never before attempted. We must use man as a constructive ecological force. So what he's saying is these lines of movement that we've been told, lines of movement adjust to physical needs for water, food, and minerals. We must control this movement. And it was these lines of movement that gave us the first clue to the relationship between the worms and the spice. So, there's a relationship between the worms and the spice. Okay, definitely. And it's associated with the lines of movement. We're getting a bit more here with the little makers, and we're getting the word maker, little makers, etc. as well. A worm Kynes thing, a surge of hope, a maker sure to come when the bubble bursts. But I have no hooks. How can I mount a big maker without hooks? So the other thing is that we're being told is whenever a spice blow goes, apparently, then it will summon, you'd imagine with all that, the explosion and the vibration, that it will summon a worm to the scene. And this is kind of another false hope for Kynes here. And it's I suppose it doesn't really make sense because the spice bubble blowing will kill him. So it doesn't really matter if a worm turns up afterwards. But the logic in his mind is that he has no maker hooks, no hooks. How can I possibly mount a big maker without hooks? More frustration. And we're told it saps little strength that he has left. Water is so near. 100 meters or so beneath him. A worm sure to come, but there's no way to trap it on the surface and use it. And he pitches forward into the sand. There's a shallow depression with the hot sand on his face on his left cheek, but the sensation is remote. So he's getting weaker and weaker. He's pretty much collapsed at this point, hasn't he? He's pitched forward onto the sand. And I suppose the main thing we'll get with him is this hand being stretched out. So Pardo's speech, here we go. I've written next to this, read it. Let's have a look. Number 30. Right, this is quite a lengthy one. So, the Arrakis environment builds itself into the evolutionary pattern of native life forms, his father said. How strange that so few people ever looked up from the spice long enough to wonder at the near ideal nitrogen-oxygen CO2 balance being maintained here in the absence of large areas of plant cover. The energy sphere of the planet is there to see and understand. A relentless process, but a process nonetheless. There is a gap in it. Then something occupies that gap. Science is made up of so many things that appear obvious after they are explained. I knew the little maker was there, deep in the sand, long before I ever saw it. And then please stop lecturing me, Father. Of course, we're being lectured as well here. And it's just a lot of would you shut up, please stop, oh, give it over, this kind of thing. I think it's quite funny. Of course, it's quite a serious situation. So Pardo's mentioning the near ideal nitrogen, oxygen, CO2 balance that's maintained here in the absence of plant cover. And he's talking about the little makers. I knew they were there. What causes it? There's a gap in the system. It's the little makers. And even before he ever saw them, he knew that they had to be there. So they're saying Kynes appears to be using his sense of hearing and touch in the scene much more than his sense of vision. Um, yeah, I got the sense that I wrote that at the start of the chapter there, Cynthia. I just went with smell and out of focus, the smells, but everything's out of focus. And I thought, as much as he's seeing things, not that he can see his father, but everything seemed kind of blurred. I just thought that's the heat delirium, but so the sense of smell seems to be working absolutely fine. Yeah, and it's and then I suppose the voice is guiding us in direction. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I thought the smells as well earlier. I thought they were a little bit. I suppose. I think we'll have to go back to the other book. Hang on a second. Figure. What did I do with it? Yep. Let's see. Esther's. Yeah, they were rank, but semi-sweet. And so yeah, the intensity, I suppose, of the smell increases with his peril, I think. But yeah, I got the sense that everything was a bit blurry for him. Because I think we had some haze and stuff described earlier. Oh, sorry, getting lost there every second. Anyway, let's see, where were we? I was just reading some comments anyway. So much more, yeah. I think that's the way we're sort of getting the thoughts and stuff. But yeah, and the sense of smells the part of the lesson here. The lecture from bit when he goes, "Can't you see I'm dying?" And he goes, "Yes, you will die too." But you can smell the pre-spice gases. The little makers are beginning to lose some of the water. So the smells are kind of almost driving, I suppose, little kick-ins of the knowledge of this weird ghostly discussion that he's having. And of course, this nitrogen and oxygen CO2 balance, I think there's been a few comments about that, basically about worm farts and stuff like that, but digestive gases, etc. And as I said, when we had the use of that word Esther pointing to that particular scientist, that made a lot of sense as well. Pardon me. Yeah, right. Let's see. I find my place again, folks. The energy sphere of the planet. Process. Relentless process. A process nonetheless. Processes mean different things in different topics, but essentially, I grabbed the definition there: a series of events that lead to a result or a product, from the procedo to procedure advance. So there is a gap in it. That something occupies that gap. Science. So something occupies that gap. Science made up. So many. Hang on. I've scribbled. My notes aren't very good here, and it's not making sense. Let me just read it. Oh yeah. That something occupies that gap. Science is made of. Hang on a second. Auto speaks 38. Read yes. The energy. I'll just double back a wee bit. The energy sphere of the planet is there to see and understand a relentless process, but a process nonetheless. There is a gap in it. Then something occupies that gap. Science is made up of so many things that appear obvious after they are explained. I knew the little maker was there deep in the sand long before I ever saw it. Of course, we had that stop lecturing me. Sorry, I'd lost my place there. We're back to where we're at. So, this hawk then. This hawk quite fun. Comes in and lands near his outstretched hand. Kynes sees it, fold up its wings, tip its head, and sort of stares at him. We have a bit of a staring contest between the two of them throughout this bit. And I suppose he's a wee bit defiant, isn't he? He's summoned up the energy to croak at it. And the bird hops away a couple of steps and stares at him again. And once again, off we go with Pardo. Lecturing Liet, lecturing us. Men and their works have been a disease on the surface of their planets before now, his father said. Nature tends to compensate for diseases, to remove or encapsulate them, to incorporate them into the system in her own way. Anthropomorphizing the nature again, just she, her. And we get this sort of, I suppose, as these lessons come, we have this ghost, if you like, this hallucination talking. We have Liet on the ground. We have this hawk, soon to be joined by a couple of his buddies. Yeah, so men are a disease on the surface of their planets. There we go. We're not very nice. The hawk kind of, I like the hawk's kind of the indifference, I suppose. Would you just, hawks are here almost like, would you just get all, we're waiting for you to die. Would you hurry up? Lowered its head, stretched its wings, refold them, transfers its attention to his outstretched hand. And he found that he no longer had the strength to croak at it. He's getting weaker again. The historical system of mutual pillage and extortion stops here on Arrakis, his father said. Okay, you cannot go on forever stealing what you need without regard to those who come after. The physical qualities of a planet are written into its economic and political record. We have the record in front of us, and our course is obvious. He could never stop lecturing, Kynes thought. Lecturing, always lecturing. So I think it's kind of interesting that Frank Herbert really doesn't want to lecture people at all about his ideas, and this is kind of a way of dealing with it, I suppose. There you go. There's Tellius DeWiz saying, sorry I'm so late. I've been so looking forward to hanging with you all. Thanks for joining us, Tellius. So this is, I agree that Kynes still has a keen sense of smell. I was just thinking that blindness, blurry vision, whatever the source, would make it hard to see horizon time, referring to the poem at the start. Oh, I got you, Cynthia. So what kind of horizons can be sensed with smell, hearing, and touch? I don't know if my old brain can handle that tonight, Cynthia. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working too well. I see what you mean. Let's have a wee look. What kind of horizons? I roamed the horizons of Al-Kalab. Well, that was the wee bit I suppose that's where kind of any understanding of the poem kind of broke down for me, because I don't get the reference. Al-Kalab, watching time level mountains and its search and its hunger for it. It's one that I did look up and all that. I couldn't really find much on it. Has anybody got any ideas? Yeah, can we sense that smell as the last sense to go before death, maybe? I think it's hearing. Well, in my experience factor. Everything but the hearing. Might be wrong though. New horizons. Deeply moved by the old man's hymn. If it's from a Fremen point of view, Cynthia, I think that the old man it's possible it could be Kynes, but I got the sense that it was a Fremen left to the desert, who kind of I'm gonna go for it. I got that. I drove my feet through a desert whose mirage fluttered like a host. Like a host. My name means host, so Sloan. A large body of men, an army, a horde, voracious for glory. But it could mean the other type of host, I suppose. Voracious for glory, greedy for danger. So if he's an old man, it's a new sense. That's him. Voracious for glory, greedy for danger. Why? Is it something to end his life? I roamed the horizons of Al-Kulab. Again, we don't have anything in the terminology of the Imperium for that, do we? I don't think so, no. Watching time and level mountains. Watching time level mountains in its search and its hunger for me. So time is questing for him. I roamed the horizons. I suppose possibly the edge of what you can see. Oh, hang on. Vid keeps cutting out. Are we still live? But so fun. Thank you, Rolando. God, I hope we're going okay here. I've been not by my head in the book. I wouldn't have noticed. I suppose I'm a wee bit slow off the start tonight. I'm just trying to get back into the flow of things, folks. So I hope you can forgive me if I'm not 100% sharp with this. It's been a wee while. trying to remember what we do here. But yeah, it could be New Horizons, Cynthia. But I think the poem's fun is about death, and I think it's somebody seeking death, possibly. I mean, if you've been left to the desert, I suppose, like the Fremen do, wouldn't you want a quick death rather than a slow, lingering one? But I saw the sparrows swiftly approach, bolder than the onrushing wolf. Two forms and they spread in the tree of my youth. I heard the flock in my branches and was caught on their beaks and claws. Yeah, as I said, just with the sparrow, but yeah, the horizons of Al Kulab, if only we knew what it meant. Let me see. I did have a wee nosy, but I didn't find much online. I have Al Kulab, I have Kulab here, and I've written not sure next to it, little dog question mark. And then I've got the name of Sahabi, which is the companions of the Prophet. I've written here, but I might have spelled that wrong. Bear with me. Is that good? Oh, got something now. And Darkulib is a village. It could be just a place. Darkulib village, but yeah, it's a different spelling. Kulab. Kulab is a city in the Kyrgyzstan region, southern Tajikistan. Let's have a wee look up. Yeah, I suppose the name of certain places, but Persian in Iran may refer to a village in all villages. City, Kalab is a city in the Catalan region of Tajikistan. But I don't know. It's possibly leaving it a little bit mysterious, I suppose, that we're not going to figure this one out. I prefer that. Vid keeps cutting out, but fun. Doing good. Vid did stutter for me a wee bit. Oh, okay. I've got. Sorry about that, folks. Just to let you know, I suppose we're in a new house and we've had the new broadband installed, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to start up before today. It's just been put in, and it's fiber optic. But we've been told we'll have some fluctuating signals, etc., for the first 10 days as it settles, whatever that means. So I prefer a slow lingering death, says Factor Nonverba. In fact, I'll take every second. Thank you very much. Yeah. Why not? Oh dear. The slow ones do linger. I have to say. All right. But yeah, so what kind of horizons can be sensed with smell, hearing, and touch? Spiritual ones, perhaps. Ah, there you go. There's my brain kicking in. Sorry about that, Cynthia. You need a new flux capacitor, mayhaps. Yeah, I could do with it. Yeah, I don't know. My entire life has just changed utterly. And it's changed with such rapidity, guys. So yeah, I'm hanging on at the minute, rowing my boat gently down the stream, if you know what I mean. But no, that's one of the reasons why I'm really glad to get back to this book and have a wee get back at this, I suppose. Give me something to sort of anchor on, you know. But yes, a new flux capacitor, absolutely. Now, where were we? Mutual plus. Oh yeah, well, Let me just find out. Yeah, he no longer has the energy or strength to croak at it. Right, there we go. So I'm just trying to find my place there again. So, the historical system of mutual pillage and extortion stops here on Arrakis, his father said. You cannot go on forever stealing what you need without regard to those who come after. The physical qualities of a planet are written into its economic and political record. We have the record in front of us, and of course, our course is obvious. So, again, I suppose Pardo taking quite a lot upon himself, but he goes, it stops here. Does he have the power to make that happen? Interestingly, but we'll see, I suppose. He never could. And this lecturing, always lecturing. There's our triplets, our plans within plans within plans. And I said, I think this Frank doesn't want to lecture you, but he is presenting a lecture here. I suppose it's one of his ways of poking at it. And we have this, I suppose, the hawk hopping a bit closer to Kynes, outstretched hand, turns its head one way and the other to study his exposed flesh. So again, the hand, if we think about the hands that we've seen throughout Dune, the Baron's hand on Arrakis, the globe, Paul's hand, and here's a man in charge of Arrakis, essentially, who has a level of control and power on it, who looks at the Fremen as his property. They're his Fremen, my Fremen. Now his hand is and the planet itself and its creatures are coming for that hand. Arrakis is a one. Here we go again with Pardo. Arrakis is a one crop planet, his father said. One crop. Excuse me. Oh, my throat's away there. There we go. Frog in the throat. Need fluids. Excuse me. God, I hate that. There we go. Right. One crop. It supports a ruling class that lives as ruling classes have lived in all times, while beneath them, a semi-human mass of semi-slaves exists on the leavings. It's the masses and the leavings that occupy our attention. These are far more valuable than has ever been suspected. So this one crop creates a ruling class. It creates a class. It's created possibly the class structure within the empire. And that all ruling classes, this class lives as ruling classes have lived in all times. Those beneath them are a semi-human mass of semi-slaves that exists on the leavings. So it's the masses that Kynes is interested in. These are his people. These are the men, and women, and children that he needs to be tools for his geological change that he wishes to bring about to Arrakis. And there's a little comment about class and all of that kind of stuff as well, and societies that have that kind of thing. Excuse me. Life is what Joseph says. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Too true. Kynes will become spice eventually to join the circle of worm life. Yeah, that's correct. In fact, we even get a wee sort of comment about that as we go through that. What's under the earth or the surface, of Arrakis is exchanged in a spice blow for what's above it. Yeah, he'll become part of the world itself. Brad, Cynthia says, Brad, the horizon seems to be an image of time in the poem. We also process time with all our senses. In some way, Kynes hears time in the voice of his father. He smells time in the ethers. Thank you for that, Cynthia. Roamed the horizons of Al-Kalab, watching time, level mountains. That's the kind of bit where I was thinking, because if he's on, I roamed the horizons watching time. Yeah, it's time. Is it time that he's watching on the horizon? Film on page. Hello, Doc Sloan. Hope you're doing well. Hi, Dominic. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm doing not too bad, sir. Thank you very much. But we've had an awful lot of madness here lately, but we're back, I suppose, and trying to get on with it. But yeah, and I suppose, yeah, Cynthia, thank you for that. That's yeah, it's one of those epigraphs. Usually, I'm not too bad with them, but I got a whole lot of a sense of different things from it. I fundamentally went with it's about death. But yeah, there are little problems, and I suppose, each word's very important within it. To roam a horizon is an interesting thing, I suppose. Because the point of everybody's horizon is different, isn't it? So yeah, a little comment about class, that this one crop, that the spice melange, supports the ruling class that lives as ruling classes have always lived. That they maintain a semi-human, and they dehumanize those below them, mass of semi-slaves. I don't know why they don't just say a human mass of slaves. I suppose the word semi there twice, but that's essentially what it is. And they exist on the leavings. It's the masses and the leavings that occupy our attention. These are the things that we can use. It's this, I suppose, the crop, the spice that the Empire doesn't take, and the people on the planet that they just ignore and think they're beneath them, that aren't on. Isn't it that the Fremen aren't in any Imperial regate or census, I believe? I'm not too sure if that's correct. Workers of the world unite. Oh dear. Well, well, I'm in the UK and I'm in Northern Ireland, as you know, I'm sure. So I've just been told by some guy that he's my king. There we go. That puts me in my place, doesn't it? I suppose it only really matters if you believe him. Like, workers of the world should take a holiday, I think. Yeah, lecturing, and this poor old Liet Kynes. He's not having a good day, is he? He's dying in the heat. He's got no still suit. The sun is melting him, burning him badly. He's on an explosive I suppose, what we call pre-spice mass bubble, and his dad's bugging the shit out of him, and he's got a hawk trying to, would you hurry up and die? I want to eat your hand. It's not a good day. So yes, indeed, I'm ignoring you, Father. Kynes whispered, "Go away." And he thought, surely there must be some Fremen near. They cannot help but see the birds over me. They will investigate, if only to see that if there's moisture available. Again, this is the third iteration, I think, of this hope. The birds here, surely the Fremen are about. They must come and check this out. And off we go again with part of the masses, the unwashed masses of Arrakis will know that we work to make the land flow with water. His father said, most of them, of course, will have only a semi-mystical understanding of how we intend to do this. Many, not understanding the prohibitive mass ratio problem, may even think we'll bring water from some other planet rich in it. Let them think anything they wish, as long as they believe in us. So that's a particularly interesting little statement, and there's a couple of things that we get from that. Is that why don't, I suppose, not that it's really answered fully, but why don't we import water from somewhere like an ocean planet, for example? And we're told here that there's a prohibitive mass ratio problem. It's probably an excuse presented by the guild, I'd imagine. But let them, maybe they'll think that, but let them think whatever they like, as long as they believe in us. And I suppose the key to that is belief there. And he also talks about a semi-mystical understanding of how we intend to do this. And again, I suppose we've been focusing a wee bit there on those horizons there, Cynthia. But if we back up a wee bit, at the epigraph before we have the song, we're talking about Fremen religious adaptation, um, mystical fusion. That I suppose the idea that religion will permeate all aspects of their life, and that's what we're about to get here now. As long as they believe in us, but the pronoun there is us. It's Pardo and Liet, and of course he said, "In a minute, I'm going to get up and tell him why what I think of him." I think it's quite funny. Kynes thought standing there lecturing me when he should be helping me. Why is he not helping me? Oh, dear. And again, our little bird takes another hop closer to Kynes' outstretched hand, and two more of his friends decide to pop down and join it. Once again, off we go. Religion and law among our masses must be one and the same. His father said, an act of disobedience must be a sin and require religious penalties. They will have the dual benefit of bringing both greater obedience and greater bravery. We must depend not so much on the bravery of individuals, you see, as upon the bravery of a whole population. So again, it's not very nice stuff. And I suppose that the fact that the Fremen are like this, that I suppose their religion is fundamentally linked to their ability to survive in their environment, wherever that may be. And it looks like as we get more and more from Dune, we understand that the Fremen have been migrating from a range of different planets over the centuries, but that they also, a number of them seem to have been quite harsh environments, with arguably maybe Arrakis being the harshest one. And of course, they can't leave because of the spice. So we absolutely, we're going to make religion and law one and the same, and that it echoes, I suppose, some of the things in maybe just religion, law, disobedience being a sin, and all of this kind of thing. It just reminded me on Butler's Erewhon a wee bit. But the point of this is to create people who are more obedient and braver. Now, if this is one of those things that we get to see the results of that in the appendix of Dune, and that it basically just suggests that wherever this man points, the Fremen will go, the men will go, the women will go, the children will go, and they'll die for him. And that's exactly what they do. And so you're as much as we will have a look at this later on. This is the thinking process that he's got. That you know, is this part of Pardo's ecological notation, for example? But people are at the core of it, using people as tools, and then in order to get better obedience and control, we need to combine religion and law. And of course, as this comment ends, you see, it depends upon the bravery of a whole population. Kynes' thoughts go, well, yeah, where is my population now when I need it most? And I suppose it's a wee bit of a selfish thought in that sense, but he's every right to be selfish. He's in mortal danger. And but it's his population. There's a sense of ownership, property, if you like, of the Fremen. They're mine, and that they're tools to the Kynes family, essentially. Even though Kynes is a Fremen, Liet Kynes is a Fremen, his father's not. He summoned all his strength, moved his hand a finger's width towards the nearest hawk. Not much at all. It hopped backwards amongst its companions, and all stood poised for flight. Our timetable will achieve the stature of a natural phenomenon, his father said. A planet's life is a vast, tightly interwoven fabric. Vegetation and animal changes will be determined at first by the raw physical forces we manipulate. As they establish themselves, though, Our changes will become controlling influences in their own right, and we will have to deal with them too. Pardon me. Feedback loops. Keep in mind, though, that we need control only 3% of the energy surface, only 3%, to tip the entire structure over into our self-sustaining system. So it's an interesting thing. Just the timetable will achieve the stature of a natural phenomenon. I think it was something that we were talking about that earlier. And it's another one of those things that the problem with this time scale that the Kynes family, I think, put their plan into operation, and it's far too they're far too short-sighted. Their thinking isn't long-term enough. It's the probably the human race's biggest problem right now is we can't think long-term, and really long-term at all, I think. There we go. Right, sorry, I've lost my place again. Give us a wee second. Dude, it's all these lectures. It's I don't know. There's a lot in this chapter, but there is something a wee bit about it that, and I can feel you can. I suppose maybe it's Herbert understanding how we would feel about listening to Pardo lecture us, but I think Kynes in a way can present a bit of a reader's response, if you like. Here, it's just I'll never stop lecturing. It goes on and on, but it is interesting. From Kynes' point of view, he's heard all of this stuff before. So the one crop planet, let's see, he's ignoring you, Father. Go away. I think that's where I'm at. Yes, the masses. I'm ignoring you, Father. Kynes whispered, go away. And he thought, surely there must be some Fremen there. Yes, sorry, that's where we're at there again. They cannot help but see the birds over me. They will investigate only to see the moisture available. Right. So here we go. Another lecture. The masses of Arrakis will know that we work to make the land flow with water. Oh, sorry, I've read that bit again. Let me just catch up. Let me figure out where I'm at. So the semi-mystical understanding, religion, myth, etc. Religion. Oh goodness, I really did fall back a bit there. Bear with me a wee second, folks. Where's my population now? Moving our timetable. Yeah, sorry, I've gone back a page. Apologies. Yeah, so it talks about we need only 3% of the energy surface, 3% to tip the entire structure over into a self-sustaining system. So this is the plan. They want to basically change the face of Arrakis, installing vegetation, animal life. And again, we said it begins with with the grasslands, etc., etc. Grassland provinces, poverty grasses, building upland forests, open bodies of water, etc. Vegetation, animal changes to get 3% of the energy surface to tip the entire structure over into our self-sustaining system. The one thing I always think about, it's interesting about Dune in terms of how this ecology is discussed and how the ecological plans are discussed in terms of what's happened to the planet, is that there's no mention of the star here in terms of how it affects the weather and climate. If you see what I mean, the star is part of a planet's environment, if you like, for want of a better word. Phil and Peace says, I find this chapter really nails home the message of the book. Well, it's all there. We're about to really hit it, aren't we? I suppose. Yes, it's coming right up. We're about to get to one is, and it's one of the key statements in it. I suppose we've been getting a fair bit. Man is poisoning his planet. We need to build up a new kind of landscape, if you like. We need to focus on agriculture. A lot of these things, the idea of class, use of wealth within natural environment, etc. There's a lot here, but yeah, in terms of and I suppose about the systemic thinking is here too. That's what we're seeing here. We're seeing Western man's systemic technological approach to fixing something. I want to change this planet. Here's how I'm going to go about doing it. and I need people as tools. And it's pretty cold, to be honest with you, if you think about it. Why aren't you helping me? Kynes one. Always the same. When I need you most, you fail me. I think I wrote daddy issues at some point there. Where are we? Kynes thought. Yeah. I mean, sorry, I've been going reading through there from missing some of my wee notes there. Just but the whole greater obedience, greater bravery, etc. from the Fremen. I've just put down that that's vile. It's not a nice thing at all. The other wee thing there, that I suppose, that just of note there, we mentioned that. Let me just find that wee bit. This is how sort of Frank Herbert describes how he wrote Dune and how he wanted to write it. Excuse me. It's just this wee bit where Pardo's saying our timetable will achieve the stature of a natural phenomenon. His father said, a planet's life is a vast, tightly interwoven fabric. Herbert talks a wee bit about how he wanted the book to be like a tightly interwoven tapestry. Actually, I think it's his term, but just the exact same phrase there. I just thought it was interesting. But yeah, so 51. There we go. I should start using my notes a bit better. Right, here we are. Why aren't you helping me? Always the same. Why, when I need you the most, you fail me. Oh no. And I just put daddy issues there, I thought. So physically, he wants to turn his head to stare at his father. And I quite like this because I think he wants to give him a bit of grief, basically. But the muscles refuse his demand. He's been getting weaker and weaker as we go throughout this chapter. And he saw the hawk move and it approached his hand, stepping away. Let me see, stepping away from his hand. Where are we? That's my bad notes for you. Bear with me a second. 51 is there we go. Saw the hawk move and approached his hand a cautious step at a time while its companions waited in mock indifference. The hawk stopped only a hop away from his hand. So that was my own bad handwriting that I can't read there. So here we go. This is the bit I suppose we're talking about. A profound clarity filled Kynes' mind. He saw quite suddenly a potential for Arrakis that his father had never seen. The possibilities along the different path flooded through him. And I've wondered, is that a golden path? Here we go. No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero, his father said. Reading my mind, Kynes thought. Well, let him. That's fundamental message of Dune. No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero, his father said. And it's kind of funny, of course, that the disasters for the Fremen, the heroes that hands that they've fallen into, one is Pardo, the other is Liet, and then of course they're going to fall into the hands of the hero Paul. And I suppose ultimately they'll end up in the God Emperor's hands before they're utterly, before they suffer their ultimate fate, I suppose. So there we go. This is one of the major themes of Dune, the disastrous hero, or the messianic hero, catastrophic hero, if you like. Take your pick. And it's a good observation of the hero, I think. The Harkonnens are the House of Saud, the Bedouin are the Fremen, House of Windsor are the Creoles. Unfortunately, there's no Atreides analog. London bankers are the financial arm of the guild. Well, the Atreides don't need an analog because they're the Atreides. So, House of Saud. But if we're going to modern analog, I suppose, if I get what you say factor. The Harkonnens, the House of Saud, the Bedouin will be the Fremen. House of Windsor, the Carinos. Unfortunately, no Atreides analog. London bankers are the financial arm of the guild. If you're going with modern analogs to, I suppose the I suppose one of the interesting things about whenever I did my work on this, guys, is that way back, way back at the start, I suppose 2006, the ecology chapter within my own work, looking at ecology within Dune, we talked about hydraulic despotism, sometimes known as Oriental despotism, and the main example that we gave of it at the time was Gazprom, the Russian gas pipeline company, in 2006, and look what's happening again. It's quite weird. Our Conans of the House of Saud. I don't know the Bedouin of the Fremen. House of Windsor, the Carinos. Yeah, House of Windsor. The House of Windsor is not their name. Fact, I don't know where you're from. Fact, I'm sure you've told me before, but my old memory is not. But they changed their name with the other part of their family at the is around World War One with their Saxe go. Oh, goodness gracious, Saxe Goethe. Oh, I forgot. My brain's not working right at all, folks. It's been a while. Saxe Coburg Heute, that's what they're called. I suppose with what happened in the Russian Revolution, I think they changed their names. The Saudis are so cruel. Yeah, it don't seem to be a particularly nice regime. Yeah, they're up to all sorts, I think, out there. Yeah, the Germans are everywhere. Yeah. Wo man spricht Deutsch, yeah. What was it they used to say? What was man spricht Deutsch? And here's showing you how old I am, I suppose, and how I learned German. Was it man spricht Deutsch in der DDR, in der Bundesrepublik of Deutschland, in der Österreich, and in der Schweiz? I think two of those countries don't exist anymore. Yes, indeed. I think the Bedouin are fascinating. I'd love to get out to that part of the world, meet some people like that. Yeah, the world's a funny place these days, isn't it? Yeah, the Germans are. So are the Irish. In fact, there's one of us in every port, haven't you heard? The Pahlavis. I don't know who the Carinos are actually based on, Matt. I never found it up. I never was able to line them up with a particular family. Let me have a look. Pahlavi dynasty, last Iranian royal dynasty from 25 to 79. Carinos. I kind of I never sort of got a sense on the Carinos. I often personally, and it's just my own thing, because I have tracked down a number of the different I suppose that the etymologies of names and families, etc., in Dune, but the Carino ones wasn't one that I could get. Carn possibly would be like a type of Irish name, but I actually went with it being kind of Italian, or that kind of thing. And the family that I kind of put there would have been something like the Medici or something like that, if you see what I mean. But yeah, the Harkonnen's a real name, and the groups that you can trade that Herbert claims that the Harkonnens can trace their ancestry to, they're all easily identifiable. They're not really they're more sort of I suppose soldier groups really. I'm a McNeely, Iris in Florida. Use Irish McNeely, Irish in Florida. Yeah. Use. So yeah, it's one of those ones. I wonder if somebody else has ever figured it out, really. But I could never get a direct who are the Carinos based on. And really, I suppose families like, is it the Medicis? Really, that's kind of where I was looking at. But I suppose, where are they from originally? Tuscany. Yeah, they produced popes, etc. Place of origin, Mugello, Tuscany, present-day Tuscany. Yeah, but it was just because, to me, that the word Carino always kind of had a sense of, sounded a bit Italian, I suppose. But that's just my own how words sound to different cultures and so on. I think they're all inspired by quite a few different inspirations, but Padishah seems to be a melding of Shah and something else. Yeah, we got, oh goodness, we got Padishah way back there. Way back in our first book club. Oh, is it right there? Possibly on the very first few pages. Let me just check for you. There you go, Padishah. Persian, Padi meaning master, and Shah meaning king. There we go. Yeah, we're doing our. That's the thing. Carino's one of those ones that just I haven't been able to get anything on, but as we go, we're doing our best to identify any sort of cultural or linguistic little things that might throw us. But we've had that one phrase today, I suppose, within the epigraph, the Al Kulab, that we haven't been able to get anything on either, and it's annoying sometimes when you can't bring a full sense of meaning to something, especially because that was throwing me quite badly there, I think. Especially if it is associated to a myth or something, The Kudos can be anyone at any time who are overwhelming force you. Yeah, I mean, they could, Roman emperors, take your pick. The Harkonnen are one of the most sadistic and cruel villains in science fiction. I think they're clever. Well, the Harkonnen, I think it's the Baron. I think is particularly clever. I like the Baron as a villain, and I think he's clever. But yeah, you're right. I suppose it's the sadism around it. But the Baron has little comments about that, doesn't he? That he only really uses it where he needs to. But yeah, the one of the things I love, film page, is the juxtaposition. Is that sorry, that's the wrong word. It's just whenever you put the Baron next to Piter, I think that's the best of the two of them there. I think that, and particularly that sadism and cruelty, but there's an intelligence with it. Cunning, I suppose, is the word we're looking for. So yeah, and of course, no more terrible disaster could befall your people for them to fall into the hands of a hero. Hands as well. Again, that agency. Hands feature an awful lot in this book. Reading my mind, Kynes thought, well, let him. So again, this is all stuff that's really in Kynes' mind. It's nothing he doesn't know, I suppose. Though there's a sense of irony there. I think that he is one of the disastrous heroes that the Fremen have fallen into. The messages, and here we go. Here's his little thought process. What he's been up to. The messages have already been sent to my siege villages. He thought, so this is going to be important in the next chapter when we move on. Nothing can stop them. If the Duke's son is alive, they'll find him and protect him, as I have commanded. This is quite appalling. I think they may discard the woman, his mother, but they'll save the boy. So there we go. And they might discard the woman. And I suppose the word discard suggests to get rid of something if it has no use, maybe, But yeah, there we go. It's one of those things. They may discard the woman, his mother, but they'll save the boy. And he seems pleased with himself about that. And of course, that's what he's done. That's going to be important. That'll pay off later. The hawk took one hop that brought it within slashing distance of his hand. It tipped its head to examine the supine flesh. Abruptly it straightened, stretched its head upwards, and with a single screech, leaped into the air and banked away overhead with its companions behind it. So you think the way that this tension's being built up, I suppose, within this chapter, all this lecturing going on, but we're kind of focused, I suppose, in some ways on Liet and this hand, and is the bird going to eat him, this kind of thing. And of course, we get the sun. The expectation is taken away from us here, and suddenly the birds are out of there, gone. What's going on here? Aha! And of course, they are desert creatures, aren't they? Just all of a sudden out of there, they've come, and Kynes thinks, aha, that's the Fremen have arrived. They've come. My Fremen have found me. And again, that's that last little iteration of hope before before it turns out not to be the case. Then he heard the sound rumbling. So again, the sounds. Every Fremen knew the sound. could distinguish it immediately from the noises of worms or other desert life. Somewhere beneath him, the pre-spice mass had accumulated enough water and organic matter from the little makers, had reached the critical stage of wild growth. A gigantic bubble of carbon dioxide was forming in the sand, heaving upwards in an enormous blow with a dust whirlpool at its center. It would exchange what had been formed deep in the sand for whatever lay on the surface. Was that fact of saying that earlier that Kynes is going to become spice? I think it was somebody saying there. Well, it's going to exchange, yeah. For exchange whatever had been formed deep in the sand for whatever lay on the surface, and that happens to be Liet Kynes. So the hawks, this is his death here. The hawks circled overhead, screeching their frustration. As much as he was frustrated earlier, so were they. They knew what was happening. Any desert creature would know. And of course, that brings us in just to the end here. And that links it in nicely because, of course, Liet is a desert creature. And I am a desert creature, Kynes thought. You see me, Father. I am a desert creature. He felt the bubble lift him, felt it break, and the dust whirlpool engulf him, dragging him down into cool darkness. For a moment, the sensation of coolness and the moisture were blessed relief. Then, as his planet killed him, it occurred to Kynes that his father and all the other scientists were wrong, that the most persistent principles of the universe were accident and error. Even the hawks could appreciate these facts. And this is this is also Herbert's belief, really, that when it comes down to it, I don't know what any of you guys think about this. I'm sure we're all human beings and we've experienced enough life amongst us that whenever it comes to it, it's just accident and error, the random things. They're the most persistent principles in the universe. They're what govern our lives more than anything. I don't know what you guys think about that one. It's a bit of quite deep, isn't it? But there we are. We're at the end of this chapter 30, folks. And it's kind of, I think it's quite a heavy chapter in terms of going through it. It has a little bit of light relief in it, but the lecturing is a bit, what's going on here, And of course, we have a ghost that we can't see. This isn't a ghost story. It's a hallucination. And we get to learn quite a bit, really just all about the pre-spice mass. It tells us about some association with the little makers with water. We've got the nitrogen, oxygen, CO2 mix. It's almost perfect. What's that to do with? It's all to do with digestive juices and so on and so forth. And as I said, we do have Herbert using language and words to name drop or point us towards scientists. And our scientist in particular, I was reading away about it, Leopold Gmelin. Now, you spell his name Gmelin, is really interesting. But a lot of this man's work is clearly what gives Herbert his ideas, I think, on the digestive nature, if you like, of how the atmosphere is made, on how the atmospheric balance is maintained on in Arrakis or on Arrakis. So yeah, he seems quite an interesting guy. His test is used with people with jaundice, and his book on chemistry, a pretty major book up until recent times. So there we go, and we have, I suppose we've got the death of two characters, but one of them died a long time ago. Excuse me, I'm going to pause this a wee second here just to quickly blow my nose, folks. Give me one wee second. That's better. Sorry about that, folks. Oh dear, dear. Let's catch up with some of your comments there. Yeah, we'll just back up the facts. The careers could be anyone at any time here. The overwhelming force users. Yeah, Harkonnens are one of the most sadistic cruel villains in science fiction. Yeah, it's just me catching up again, film the page. In fact, the Beast Raban shows what the next generation after a successful sadist is like. That's quite an interesting comment. In fact, you could look at the Roman emperors and see who follows who. If you see what I mean, there's a few interesting ones. But what exactly is a successful sadist? Cat is a wheel. Always informative, as much from Doc from chat. Thank you, Bojack. The masochist says beat me, and the sadist says no. So I've heard that one before. Thank you very much. It's good to be back, guys. As I said, it's been a bit of a heavy time for us here, and I was a wee bit worried about doing this chapter, but it's I suppose you probably see I'm not my usual relaxed self, but I'm getting there. And yeah, I suppose it's a really interesting chapter. Once you get through it, I suppose, picking apart Pardo's message, what makes this chapter really interesting, and if anybody wants to do it, I think it's worth doing between now and the next. Is go and have a look. This would be the chapter now if you wanted to break from the narrative and go look at Appendix 1 and read called The Ecology of Dune. And it is a mini adventure of Pardo Kynes, and it's yeah. And of course, at the end of that appendix, just to read it to you, and it's a weird story, isn't it? It's quite weird. But by this time, his son Liet Kynes was 19, a full Fremen and sandrider who had killed 100 Harkonnens. The imperial appointment for which the elder Kynes already had applied in the name of his son was delivered as a matter of course. The rigid class structure of the five Fremen had its well-ordered purpose here. The son had been trained to follow the father. The course had been set by this time. The ecological Fremen were aimed along their way. Liet Kynes had only to watch and nudge and spy upon the Harkonnens until the day his planet was afflicted by a hero. But yeah, it's the Kynes are up. Pardo Kynes is an absolute manipulator of the Fremen. And if we sort of put two and two together, we realize that because the Missionaria Protectiva have been in on Arrakis and sown certain myths within the Fremen populace, I suppose that the Fremen bring in, adapt, that whenever Kynes gets here with his ideas, Pardo Kynes, he's actually able to use what's been set up already by the Bene Gesserit. And I think that's an interesting thing in the book that's not really talked about too much, is that it's easy for Paul to come into the Fremen in a certain way because the Kynes has already done it, and I think it's the myths that are set up by the Fremen, by the Missionaria Protectiva, by the Bene Gesserit, that allow him to so easily, integrate with the Fremen, I suppose. And there is this kind of weird suicide, I suppose, by a Fremen who, rather than kill Pardo Kynes, just kills himself. This is Uma, isn't it? I think you call him. Or is that the Uma's? Kynes the Uma? Hang on, no, that's Uliet. That's it, isn't it? Sorry, there you go. Yeah, I should have remembered that. He's called Uliet because Liet is named after him. But yeah, there's a lot there, and we really are starting to get. And of course, we've just lost a major. He's a pretty important character, and I suppose as we've been talking there, this wasn't really dealt with in the film. The character was kind of chopped and changed quite a bit, and didn't even die this way. And I suppose therefore, all of what we see, all what we learn from this sort of hallucination of Pardo is completely lost on us. And I suppose within the film it'll have to be explained. But there's a lot there. There's the Little Makers. There's a relationship between the Little Makers that they lose some of their water into the mass, the priest, the whole thing. And anybody wants to check it out, by the way, as I said before, I've done the work on this. If you go to my community section on the YouTube channel, it's probably way down at the bottom because I put it up ages ago. You'll find a sort of life cycle of the worms and the little makers, and it's taken from the books. And occasionally Herbert changes terms and things like that. But a lot of this is quite important in terms of what's going on. And I suppose that whenever it breaks down the mystery of the worms later on, things like how do you kill the God Emperor if you could, this kind of thing, little things like this are kind of important. And I suppose what possibly Herbert's leaving as a little clue there about what he says about science. That things seem obvious. Science, was it? There's a gap. It's when he's talking about the gap that's created in the, I suppose, the energy system of the planet, that he knows that something has to fill the gap. Something occupies that gap. Science made up. So many things appear obvious after they're explained. And that's why he says, I knew the little maker was there. I think a lot of this stuff, I suppose, later on when we get to it, we think about it, yeah, that was kind of obvious. So the idea of changing this planet, terraforming it, and using the people, and it's the dream of one man, Pardo. And if we want to think about what is a golden path, it's potentially one man's vision of the future. And we get this little moment where I suppose where Kynes has a moment of profound clarity. He saw a potential for Arrakis his father hadn't. Possibilities along the different path flooded through him. And you kind of wonder what is that potential? But his father's wrong. Something's not right. Excuse me. Ultimately, we'll get most of how it goes wrong, I think, explained through Leto II in Children of Dune. I think it's a certain amount of time has passed. He's one of those ones that's able to put a few of those pieces together. But it's, yeah, this is the death of Western man. Western man's thinking, I can control this planet. My hand can rule this world. I have agency. He's the guy with agency. At the end of this, his hand is withered, torn, and physically unable to move. He's lost all agency. Of course, he's dying, but just if we run with that metaphor of what the hands represent, etc. His Pardo's golden path essentially died with him. Now Liet's has died, and it will be picked up by Paul. And I don't know if you agree with me or not. That's just one of those things that I think that the golden path is part of, is the vision of this hero, of the hero. It's part and parcel of the hero. But like if you think about the eternal champion, if you like, something like that, the eternal champion always has a weapon, always has a companion, part and parcel, and different, and I suppose relative to each eternal champion. But there we go. Yeah. Thank you very much, folks. Has anybody got any questions or anything? I'll wrap up shortly. Excuse me. And yeah, it's good to get through a chapter. I suppose as I said, hopefully I'm not too out of sorts, so get back into the swing of things, I suppose. But we have had a bit of a bonkers time here. I probably will have a wee bit of a chat about it at some point. When will we see you again, Matt? I suppose basically all. We need our dog education. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt. Matt, I suppose you know that basically the last time I got a terminal diagnosis from my father, and within a month of that, he was dead. And basically then we were still caring for his wee doggy after that, and we've had all sorts to sort out. So just even actually having access to communications for a while has been problematic. So I didn't want to come back really and start back at this and disappear. And as I said, real life happened to me, and it was just very unfortunate. But so prior to this, we were unable to keep up any kind of regular schedule. And I'm hoping really just to stick with this every Thursday for the book club. And I have fulfilled I've been a carer for 13 years, and I have fulfilled all my obligations. and all my, what is it, you would call them, deathbed requests and stuff. So I have a little bit of freedom, and life is hopefully starting for me and my family now. So no, we're going to try and be on here every Thursday with the book club, guys, and I mean that. So looking forward to it, and hopefully then, as I said, the other thing is I'd like to start doing get back at making some of my videos, and I've just finished. I suppose I hadn't got a lot of reading done over the last few months, but I just finished a whole bunch of things in a row there, and I finished the Town Boat Cully the Irish. Epic about I suppose the Ulster epic about Cuchulainn. I found it quite an interesting references in that about bending like a reed in the water, and I went and I finished Alfred Bester's The Demolished Man finally, which I've been wanting to get through because I wanted to sort of grab Alfred Bester's two good books and tear through them again, and I might make a wee quick video about that. But otherwise, looking forward to getting on with some of the things that I said we would talk about in the A to Z. I'm very sorry for your loss, but I'm glad you'll be spending more of your future with us. Thank you, Matt. It's my dad was a good age, and no, he had a natural end to a natural life, I suppose, which, if you know him, is a pretty good thing because yeah, nobody got him, I suppose, put it that way. So no, it was just very fast, I suppose, and excuse me, and it was a bit like just in terms of trying to sort of direct carers and social workers and nurses and doctors and all sorts of things. It's a bit like running a military campaign, you know. But my wife was absolutely fantastic. Her advice and knowledge in terms of how to, I suppose, work the social health and care system in this country was invaluable, you know. But yes, it's thank you very much, Matt. It's just been a wee bit of it's just life, isn't it? It's you know. But no, hoping to get back at my station and get back. We've had life on hold, even even jobs and things have had to be shut down and stuff. So, and as I said, we're here at the doghouse. We're a little doggy less as well. We've lost little Bonnie too, unfortunately. But we had her with us for a good few months there. But my dad was ill, so it was just one of those things, I suppose. When we brought the wee dog down with my dad, whenever he was about, he was ill, and he was delighted to see her. And about 12 days after, she just went too. So we've buried Bonnie in the backyard, and we've planted a fig tree, which is quite interesting. Not many fig trees in this country, but we Miss Bo Whiffet is the wee doggy we used to call her. She's just a big ball of love, and we always assume that the fig tree is associated with the goddess of love, Ishtar, I believe. So there we go. I happen to be a nurse's aide for the elderly, says Joseph. I take care of 23 little old people every day. Excellent, Joseph. Well done. I love it. I can't imagine doing this with my own family, though. That would be hard. Yeah, I suppose there's nurse's aide for the elderly. There's a point where you're caring for someone, Joseph, and then they need nursing care. And you can, someone like myself, you know, you can provide care up to a point, but then you need nurses, you know, and it's getting the whole thing to work. I'll tell you what, it was an absolutely mad story, and we're thinking about maybe having a wee talk about it with my wife, maybe to put together a wee video for people who may have to deal with I suppose a loved one who's got a terminal diagnosis, and it's a short one, and how all the different things that are available there to help you. I suppose if you don't know about them, you won't know about them. Yeah, excellent, Joseph. Nothing but praise for the carers and nurses that have been here. You know, and particularly we had the let me see, make sure I use the right the Marie Curie nurses, the palliative care end of life nurses. There's a small number of them in this country. I don't think there's more than maybe about 70 or 80 of these nurses, and they're like shock troops. They're like paratroopers. They're incredible. They come in at the end for the really hard stuff, and they're just amazing to watch. Get nothing but admiration and respect for them. You know, they're absolutely brilliant. But our healthcare system's in a bit of a problem. It's not all working, so it's a system that needs to be manipulated. Very sadly, you know, I do a lot of hospice care. Yeah. Well, I did this with my mother a long time ago as well, Joseph. We used to do a bit of, my band was a wee charity band. We used to raise money for the um, for all the different cancer charities that sort of helped out, But I'm sure well, maybe a poster about it somewhere. But that's probably one of the few ones that we didn't do. But yeah, um, uh, it's good work. It really is. It's hard work. In fact, it says I'm too afraid to be in medical fields. It's not for everyone, I would say, but particularly the carers in this country, they're not paid that well, and so, depending on the level of care they're giving, it's a disgrace, to be honest with you. Your healthcare system, dude, you should look at mine. Just because we got one doesn't mean it works well. you know. Mm. Damn Tories! I would put the blame on the private sector a lot as well, because they milk the public health sector. I've had my healthcare factored off to the private sector here, and for a complete waste of time, and then get sent back to the National Health Service, and then told them going to see a new person who's National Health, and guess what? It's the same guy, who would then cancel his appointments because he has to go play golf. So no, the health service is in a lot of bother over here, but it does work well for the elderly, I think, and for things like palliative care and stuff like that. My wife would work in that area. Um, just as we have a system that literally shoves old people into the street. That's appalling. Excuse me. No, how we look after our people in our society really does say a lot about us, doesn't it? I suppose. Um, but no, yeah, it's one of those things where yeah, we've millions who die because they can't afford the bill. Yeah, it's sad, that, isn't it? It's I suppose Northern Ireland's part of the UK, where we're part of the National Health Service here, but it's not really working. I got a letter the other day. I have to go. I have a bother with my hands, and I've had bother with my hands since I played my last gig in the Ulster Hall in 2015, and haven't been able to work as a musician. Not that I kind of saw it as work, but I can't do a 2 hour gig because of my hands. And I only just got the letter to come up and see about your hands the other day. And then they phoned the same day as the appointment and cancelled it, and it's now next month. But it's it's only 7 years, like. Can you all get private insurance as well? Yes, you can, Joseph. But if you're like myself, then I'm poor, so no. It's yeah, I understand. Can't afford the bill. Well, as old Sharpie says, what if you do if you can't? What do you do if you don't have any money? You do without. The rich do well. They underfund the NHS. Yeah, no. Britain's a mess, and Northern Ireland's really a bad mess at the minute as well. Politically and economically, it's not good. But I just try to ignore everybody, really. Especially. It's interesting, actually. I suppose we've talked a wee bit about the troubles here in Northern Ireland, and my father, etc., etc. Never really, we wouldn't actually talk too much about. But now that he's passed away, I happily tell you what he did and what I got up to. There you go. Well, that's it, Matt. The day is coming. But my father would have been the close protection officer of the new king, and the queen, and all of her children, them four, whenever they visited Northern Ireland at a certain period. But my father was a special branch, RUC special branch, and he worked for a part of special branch known as E4A, which is go look that up. So, and he used to take me to work, is the interesting thing. So we used to, yeah. I people were asking me about what did I get up to in the troubles, and that's a really interesting question. But no, not a B special. That's a wrong era. No, E4 is like would work with MI5 and the SAS and that kind of stuff, and they're dodgy, to say the least. I dare say Wikipedia, maybe it would. Let me have a look. Oh, military, let's see. No, I don't see them. Let's have a wee look. E4A, Wikipedia. There you go. Type E4A and you'll get you'll find it on Wikipedia. Very little. E4A is an intelligence gathering unit within E Department of the Royal Ulster Constabulary, probably established in 1978. It is primarily made up of police officers who conducted surveillance to be acted on by RUC Special Branch E4C. E4A was supported by Headquarters Mobile Support Unit, now part of Special Operations Branch, and targeted paramilitary groups, primarily the Provisional IRA. There you go. So that's what he used to do. And I said, interestingly enough, my dad had done a lot of photography, etc. You would not see him photographed at all. But there is a photograph of him with the Queen that somebody pointed out. That somebody I knew kind of said they'd always known my father, and that there was actually a picture of him standing next to the Queen, protecting her in their workplace, and he shouldn't have been photographed, naughty boy. Excuse me. So he used to take me to work with him to meet his informants and things like that, and then I actually, I when he was injured once upon a time, he had light duty, so he used to take me with him, and I basically went around destroying a lot of guns, which I think I've mentioned that I'm very proud that I've got helped to get rid of a lot of guns. So that was him, yeah. So the reason why I said my dad very happy that he died of natural causes is because basically nobody got him. The IRA didn't get him. The Protestant terrorists didn't get him. The Catholic terrorists didn't get him. The British Army didn't get him. The police didn't get him. And that's right, you probably get got by your own people in this country. So none of the buggers got him, as they like to put it, and he died a peaceful death. So there you go. Matt says, I'm an emergency manager myself. I'm a civilian employee of a police department. You work with Ian Fleming then? No. My dad wouldn't have been that old, I suppose. He'd be busy in the days to come. So in fact, you see the craziness ratcheting up, don't you? Oh yeah, cool with me. People like crazy. Oh, well, yeah, the world's it's a little bit crazy, and things can always get worse, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose that's it. I miss him. He was a good man, by the way, and I could tell you a few funny stories about him actually, and I probably will if we can put together some photographs, and we have some other interesting things. But my dad was an interesting, to say the least, you know. There we go. Well, listen, folks, thank you very much. It's been lovely to have you all back. Thanks for joining me. And as I said, I have missed you, and I've missed doing this. And I'm sorry if I wasn't totally. I think I was a wee bit nervous just getting back into this. I suppose life's changed so much, and even just trying to get a room together really to get things going and that kind of thing. Just remember, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. It was meant to be derisive when Reagan said it, but I always thought those were golden words. What were the words of Reagan? Ronald Reagan is what I would call him. At least now. Oh, tell one of all of it. Yeah, tell one at least now. Oh, okay. I could. We missed you too, Doc. So missed you too. I could definitely tell you a good one or two. But well, as I said, I used to. People have asked me about Smithfield Market in Belfast, and that's where I used to go as a child a lot. And my dad would take me up there, and he said the scariest words were in English language where I'm from. Government, I'm here to help. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, my wife, my wife has one up. Was it government? If you think our problems are bad, wait till you see our solutions. Dear, oh dear. No, the government here, Matt, is very poorly educated religious maniacs who support terrorist scum, pretty much, and think that the Earth's about 4,000 years old. That covers most of them, and are happy to oppress women. We do. Our government's appalling in Northern Ireland, and that's local government. I'll not really comment on the UK government, but we have an unelected prime minister and an unelected king, I suppose. Bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. Someone once said it was the nature of bureaucracy, or nature of evil in the 20th century was the nature of bureaucracy. I can tell you one about my dad if you like. Let me see. I'm trying to think of a good one, but I suppose I'll tell. I don't know. I'll tell you what. Let me see. Getting back into harassing women with abortion rights here now. My wife's got them all outside her place of employment at the minute. I'm thinking about going up and having some fun with them, discuss, a la, birthing contracts and stuff like that. Go a bit Erewhonian. I suppose, yeah, I've actually got a whole bunch of memoirs of my dad's here and stuff, all sorts of things, notebooks and things. But if you want to, I can tell you this, that he's not a Catholic, and he's not really, but he managed to get a Catholic funeral, and I think he did it very deliberately, and we've had a bit of fun with his funeral, I suppose. But once upon a time, I suppose the story I'll tell you is about how to punch a policeman in the face 3 times in a police station and get away with it. But there are 2 quite nasty words that are used within Northern Ireland Catholic and Protestant culture for each respective culture. And the first one is called is a taig, which is a derogatory name for a Catholic. The other one is a hun, which is a derogatory name for a Protestant. So basically, in the police station in Larne, one of the policemen went up and says, basically says, "You're a taig, aren't you, Terry?" And my dad just punched him right there, and he ran away to his sergeant and came running back and went, "Boo hoo, he hit me." And he said to him, "Why did Terry hit you?" And he says, "Because I thought he was a taig." And my dad punched him again for saying that out loud again in front of his sergeant, and just go on, And at that point, the guy went, "Oh, I'm sorry, Terry, I didn't realize you were a hun." And that point, my dad punched him in the face a 3rd time, and there was nothing that the sergeant could do, because it's like using the N word, I suppose, over here. And that was it, basically. That's the sort of man my dad was. Years later, he had to be retired out of the police because he got injured. And whenever, just to show you what a vile and sectarian culture, that's a good example of how sectarian our police are in Northern Ireland. And our current English chief constable, who's over here taking charge, is attempting to make a 100% sectarian police force. He's over, managing the colonies here. He's doing a horrendous job and needs to go. But yeah, an example of that was basically then once upon a time, the lawyers actually came up and presented my dad with his financial claim for his injuries. Went, "There you go. That's the best you could expect if you're a Protestant." My dad says, "Well, I'm not a Protestant." And they went, "Oh shit!" So they'd assumed that he was, because he was a policeman. You see, again, it's a sectarian police force, and so they went away and came back with a bigger offer of more money for him, and went, "There you go. You get a wee bit more because you're Catholic." And of course, he went, "Who said I'm Catholic?" And then they went away and came back with a 3rd amount. But the idea that you're only Catholic, Protestant, all of this stuff. The one thing that I really do owe my father is that he made sure that I wasn't raised as a Catholic or a Protestant, any shape or form, that kept me well away from them. And that was basically to keep us safe. It's not the same for the rest of my family, unfortunately. I'm the only person that was raised that way. But yeah, there you go. So that's just a couple of his minor tales, to be honest with you. But I'm very proud of that one. I'm actually, yeah, the police officer in Larne Police Station deserved to be punched 3 times, but there's nothing he could do about it, and that's the sort he was. But he was a good man, and I think he was through the mill and the troubles. I think, and I suppose there's a graduating photo uh, with all the other police that joined up with him at the time, and at the time, I suppose the RUC had the highest death rate of any police force in the world, and I think only second to El Salvador or something like that. But yes, it's my father that taught me how to look under the car for bombs at the age of 9, um, in case the IRA planted one and I got into the car first. And as I said, eventually he was sort of made known to them, so we had to pull out and move. So I've been moving house most of my life because of his as a child, and I suppose my father's a policeman the entire life up to my adult life, so he's never been anything else for me. But yeah, he's. I'll tell you what, I've got some stories that you wouldn't believe. Some those are two of the funnier, just minor ones. But yeah, he's been up to he's done all sorts of things, and he's been at, I suppose, the heart of the troubles, and would be what you would call an actor with agency, if you like. He's things have happened. He's saved a lot of lives. Put it that way. He's helped a lot of people, and as I said, he ridiculously took me along with him, and I suppose it's maybe a Northern Irish thing, with the way people use their children in this country. But I used to meet his informants, for example, and then maybe the next week find out that they'd been murdered because the British government had given them up. This kind of thing. Did he ever testify in court for the troubles? Yeah, you're in court all the time if you're a policeman, so you're always doing that kind of thing. But yeah, basically, it's interesting. There's a big news story recently about how the IRA got into Special Branch headquarters in Castlereagh, and I was there all the time as a child. I hung around there. Nobody ever said boo to me, and so I spent a lot of my childhood holidays in up at the top where the dark room is, and there you go, at Castlereagh headquarters police station. But I was in and out of a lot of police stations with them, an army barracks and all sorts of things. And if you know a wee bit about that, I suppose it's quite, there's some mad things that they used to do for us, because you're not like other kids. But I'll tell you what, guys, the next time I'll tell you what Special Branch in the British Army did to Santa. If you oh dear, the things I saw done to Santa, poor Santa. But there you go. Listen, folks, I'm just procrastinating a wee bit about my dad, but I'm going to wrap it up there. It's getting late. I didn't realize what time it was. So I'll be running every Thursday, folks, at 10, hopefully, and there shouldn't be any wee gaps from now on. We're just going to be doing our back to work and doing our bit of work in the real world, doing a bit of tutoring and stuff like that. And we'll be doing the book club every Thursday at 10, and there should be no gaps. Fingers crossed, So there we go, folks. Listen, all the very best to you. There's Factor saying thank you, Night Doc. Good to hear from you. It's good to have you all here, folks, and thank you very much. And yeah, looking forward to pushing on with the book and trying to seeing what else we can find out about our favorite sci-fi book, Dune. But thank you very much for joining us. All of you, look after yourselves, no matter where you are. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much. All the very best. See you, Doc, says Matt. All the best, Matt. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Good night.